7-colored lance. The madman had used this spell before, and Wang Lin even knew the chant and seals for it. However, he hadn't comprehended it, so he couldn't use it. However, he knew the 7-colored lance contained the power to destroy the world. It was an extremely powerful spell that didn't belong to this world, like the realm burning umbrella. Everything before Wang Lin dissipated, and the only thing that remained was the 7-colored light. His eyes were filled with despair, and the aura of death surrounded his body. Wang Lin understood he couldn't dodge, escape, or resist. This 7-colored lance was the real life and death calamity. In his eyes, those rolling clouds seemed to appear once more. He saw the helpless white bird that tried to escape the dark clouds as the rain fell. That bird clearly appeared before Wang Lin's eyes. It was filled with despair, reluctance, and struggle, but in the end it was still devoured by the dark clouds. That bird was the sign of the life and death calamity. The sky was shrouded in 7-colored light. The lance formed by the 7-colored light got closer and closer. Wang Lin revealed a bitter smile. He understood it was likely he wouldn't survive this calamity. Father, Mother Taiju is very tired. I'll come and accompany you, okay? The despair in Wang Lin's eyes disappeared and was replaced by relief. He was very tired. He wanted to rest, he wanted to close his eyes, he wanted to live a mortal life. He didn't want to face those life and death struggles. He didn't want to consider all the struggles against fate. He didn't want to drag his parents into it. Have to send his parents off and sweep before their grave. He would rather not know anything himself, not know that there were cultivators on planet Suzaku, that there were other cultivation countries, and that there was the cultivation alliance outside of planet Suzaku. He didn't want to know that the space outside planet Suzaku had countless other planets like planet Suzaku. He didn't want to know that outside planet Suzaku there was the cultivation alliance, and that the cultivation alliance was only in the brilliant void. He also didn't want to know that outside the brilliant void there was Alheaven, the Cloud Sea, and the Summoned River. He didn't want to know that all of this was only the inner realm. He didn't want to know that there was the outer realm outside. As Wang Lin lived on, he faintly realized that there was even more out of that. And more. It's all over. I am free, Wan, air. I am sorry in the end. I didn't gain the strength to awaken you, Ping E. I am sorry your father did his best. Wang Lin felt bitter as he closed his eyes. These were his last thoughts before death as the 7-colored lance closed in on him. As he closed his eyes, the clothes on his chest collapsed and his chest followed. Flesh and blood were ripped apart, and his face was the same. Dust to dust, earth to earth. When the 7-colored lance was only a few hundred feet away, warm images appeared before his eyes. In the yard, his father inhaled from his pipe and spat out smoke before he put the pipe down. There was a small wooden carving of a colt in his hand. His face was filled with a smile. This was his gift for Taiju's 7th birthday. Wang Lin crouched next to his father with his hands on his chin and his eyes filled with excitement. He watched the little colt take form. In his eyes, his father was omnipotent, his father was the heavens, his father could do anything. Not far away, his mother was holding a pan. While feeding the chickens, ducks, and livestock around her, she would look at the father and son pair with a soft gaze filled with happiness. The image gradually dissipated into countless fragments. These fragments gradually reformed into a secluded valley surrounded by shade. There was a wooden cabin inside the valley. Li Muwan was sitting in front of the house with her hair coiled up like a madam. Her delicate face radiated happiness as she gently looked at the man before her. She had waited for a long time for this moment. Now she could silently watch him until the end of eternity. Her gentle hand moved over the ancient zither and gentle tunes played. As the music echoed, Wang Lin held a piece of wood like his father and looked gently at Li Muwan as he carved for her. The two looked at each other. This valley was filled with an unexplainable feeling, and it was unforgettable. This image slowly dissipated, and after it turned to fragments, they reformed once more. He was on a tall mountain. As the winds howled, Wang Lin stood silently at the top of the mountain, filled with sadness and loneliness. He looked ahead and there was melancholy hidden in his eyes. Although it was hidden, it was very strong and leaked out in his shadow. It landed in the eyes of a youth behind him. This youth wore coarse clothes. When he was behind his father, no matter how strong the wind was, the wind that landed on him became gentle. His father was like a mountain that supported his world. With his father there, he was not afraid of the mountain peak being too high or the wind too violent. With his father there, He wasn't afraid of anything. The youth looked at his father's back and said earnestly, "Dad, Ping Er will accompany you forever. We will never be apart." The last image in his mind collapsed, and his body collapsed along with it. The seven-colored lance howled and got closer and closer to Wang Lin. However, just at this moment, a voice came from the blue light that covered the hole in the sky. Eh? This voice appeared extremely abruptly, and not even the blue light could stop it. As this voice echoed into this world, the expression of the sovereign changed. His gaze that would never change even if heavens collapsed was filled with extreme fear. Even when Master Scarlet's soul appeared, he wasn't like this, but when he heard this one word, his mind almost collapsed and he subconsciously retreated. His face was filled with disbelief and fear so powerful, he couldn't even conceal it. "Ha, this king finally found you. Damn it, you actually ditched this king. This king won't allow it." In the blue light, the madman was holding half a chicken leg in his hand and had a smug gaze. He walked out from the blue light. When the madman appeared, a powerful golden light spread from his body. The expression of the sovereign changed. Even though he had cultivated for countless years, his mind collapsed. Mas, the sovereign almost lost his wits as he looked at the madman, and his face instantly turned pale. After the madman spoke, he saw Wang Lin and the seven-colored lance. With a bang, the lance shrouded Wang Lin in a seven-colored glow. The madman was startled for a moment and let out a shocking roar. Simply ignoring the sovereign, golden light shrouded him and stepped toward the seven-colored light. "You can die, you haven't played with this king yet. You promised to take me to a lot of places to play." The madman roared with madness in his eyes. He rushed into the seven-colored light and hugged Wang Lin's collapsing body. The seven-colored lance contained a destructive aura, and when the madman hugged Wang Lin, that destructive force erupted. What made the seven-colored lance so terrifying was that its power would erupt 7 times, and each time was stronger than the last. A series of violent rumbles echoed in a row, each time stronger than before. After 7 thunderous rumbles passed, the world trembled, and the sky was torn open by force. Even the water below erupted, and this sealed world turned into fragments. The fragments scattered in all directions like a storm. This storm ripped open the world, ripped open space, and ripped open all existence. Then a black hole suddenly appeared. This black hole led to an unknown place, and it was pitch black. That madman had a complete celestial immortal body. During this collapse, his body had disintegrated several times. In the end, under the destructive force of the seven-colored lance, he held the unconscious Wang Lin, and the two were inhaled by the black hole. At this moment, as the sealed world collapsed, the sovereign's body became blurry. He stared at the black hole that had already dissipated and murmured to himself. He really went mad. Really went mad. It must be him who gave the immortal celestial body to Wang Lin. If he didn't go mad, he would never have done this. He was seriously injured, and given his character from the past, he would never save anyone. He really went mad. He doesn't recognize me anymore. The sovereign relaxed and his body dissipated. Just as he was about to dissipate, a person silently walked out beside him. This person was old Goshan. The moment he appeared, he pointed at the sovereign's blurry figure. The sovereign suddenly turned his head, but he was in a trance and was caught off guard. It was too late to dodge now, and he let out a painful groan as his figure disappeared without a trace. Old Ghost John looked at where the black hole was and pondered. This sealed world had been created by many third-step cultivators in the outer realm. Even with the aura leaking from the hole as guidance, it still took him a bit to get here. A step late. It's unfortunate about that celestial blood. As for that madman, could it really be that person in his memory? I didn't think he had really gone mad. They were devoured by that black hole. The aura that came from the black hole was clearly the cave wall layer. One step in the celestial immortal, one step here. Old Ghost John shook his head and left. Embarrassed, I've been remiss in saying thank you. Thank you all for pressing the like button. Thanks to the fellow Taoists for their praise. Planet Suzaku gave off a gentle light. From afar, it looked peaceful. Only an invisible speck of dust collapsed and released a slight sound. That dust particle was the location of Wang Lin's calamity. After old Ghost John disappeared, more and more ripples echoed around planet Suzaku. Soon, ripples covered the whole sky and figures anxiously walked out. Master Hongshan, Master South Cloud, Xing Lin, Xing Shui, etc. They didn't appear at once but one after another. Powerful divine senses swept the area until they locked onto the collapsed dust particle. Everyone silently pondered. They couldn't feel Wang Lin's aura. Just like when Wang Lin went missing back then, it was as if he was dead. Master Hong Shan's eyes were filled with sorrow. After a long time, he softly said, "He is not dead. The great battle is about to begin. The outer realm will spread this." Qing Lin let out a sigh as he looked at the collapsed dust particle. The image of Wang Lin from the past flashed before his eyes. Qing Shui looked up at the stars in the distance, and his gaze became extremely cold. A killing essence aura spread out from his body and shrouded the area. I'll replace him and station myself at the Cloud CS battle station. Qing Shui closed his eyes and his face gradually changed. Eventually, he took Wang Lin's appearance, and even his cold temperament became similar to Wang Lin's. He gave up on finding his daughter and his freedom. He chose to take Wang Lin's appearance and become a symbol at the battle station in the Cloud Sea. "Junior brother, I'll get revenge for you. As for everyone involved in this matter, if I have even the glimmer of a chance, I'll give it my all to get revenge for you." Qing Shui closed his eyes to hide his sorrow. Many people who had arrived here knew well that Wang Lin couldn't avoid this calamity. They knew the outer realm had planned for a long time to avoid their detection and launch his attack. It would be very difficult for Wang Lin to avoid it, and he was likely dead. As the silence continued, everyone gradually dispersed. However, the anger in their hearts burned brighter and brighter. Planet Suzaku in the distance still gave off a gentle light, as if it would stay like this forever. All the people Wang Lin was familiar with were still immersed in their own world. They still didn't know what had happened here. Zhou Wutai was still sitting on the Suzaku statue, silently drinking wine. In Imperial City in the country of Zhao, that old house and yard were still there. The tomb remained lonely, only that weeping and grieving figure was gone. Only a few empty wine jugs sat on the ground. There was no longer any wine from the Seng family inside. Only the giant statue holding the heaven-splitting axe and looking at the sky remained. It seemed to become an eternal existence. Several days later, a cold-looking young man silently stood under the statue. He slowly knelt down and kowtowed as tears flowed down the corners of his eyes. "Teacher, 13 will announce that he is your disciple when I am in the limelight and under everyone's gazes." Several days later, a beautiful woman came with teary eyes and a slightly old tiger. She gently stroked the statue as her tears flowed down her cheeks and fell on the ground. "Uncle, I am Zhou Ru, I am little Ru heir." Several days later, a burly man laughed before the statue. He laughed and laughed until tears flowed down from his eyes. He held 2 jugs of wine as if he wanted to get drunk with the statue. After getting drunk, the burly man began to cry. "If I didn't guide you down the path of cultivation, if we didn't meet back then, if I had taken away the heaven-defying bee back then, if you were still a naive teenager back then." Several days later, a gorgeous woman stood before the statue. She stood there for a long, long time. She looked at the statue as sun rose and set. After several cycles, she silently left. 2 drops of tears fell as she turned, shattering when they fell on the ground. She was Mu Bingmei. Several days later, a woman wearing a pink, water-patterned skirt arrived on planet Suzaku looking exhausted. She looked at the statue and recalled the past. "Lord doesn't know me, but I know Lord." Several months later, the passage of time seemed to be forgotten like the void. There was no beginning or end, only 2 broken bodies. This place was a dark void with no life or objects. The silence here seemed to have existed forever. In this void, there was a faint blood-colored light that formed a circle. Inside this circle, Wang Lin's body was collapsing on a wide scale. It was covered in scars. Beside him, the madman's eyes were closed, but his face was ashen. There were no injuries on his body, but there was 7-colored light between his eyebrows. The 7-colored lance couldn't hurt the madman's immortal body, but it could hurt his soul, which had become unprotected after the serious injury from the past. This blood circle of light was formed by the drop of golden blood that Wang Lin held in his hand. As the light gently surrounded them, Wang Lin struggled to open his eyes. He didn't know how long he had been asleep, but he knew that he would only be awake for a short period of time. Feeling bitter, Wang Lin saw the unconscious madman and his gaze became gentle. He let out a sigh and barely managed to raise his hand. Only after waving several times did he manage to open his storage space. 3 Dao fruits floated out, and he inhaled. The three fruits turned into three rays of light and entered Wang Lin's mouth with their unimaginably chaotic Tao intent. Wang Lin's eyes revealed the strongest light at the end of his life. His left hand grabbed the madman, and then his right index finger pointed toward the area between his own eyebrows. Dream Tao, using what's left of his power, he used the third original spell he had made, Dream Tao. Using his own Dream Tao to dream of thousands of years ago in that dream, he would complete his life and death, karma, and true and false essences. His right hand dropped and Wang Lin closed his eyes. Little brother, wake up. Alas, how are you so drunk? I am going to clean up. Please wake up on the side of the road. In a humble restaurant, a waiter in green helplessly pushed a drunk young man on the table. This is really a scholar. So drunk after just 2 cups. The waiter pushed harder. Heaven is an inn for all living things. Time is the hundreds of passing travelers and being born into a dream. Such a joy of dream. Good poem. Good poem. The young man had an intoxicated gaze as he looked at the waiter and giggled. Hey, let me tell you. I dreamt I was an immortal. Then the young man fell onto the ground and began snoring. Feebly asking, 4,000 words, does that count as a major chapter? Could it be hoping for the like button for the video and the followers too? The early morning sunlight gently scattered over the earth. The sky was clear and the feather-like clouds were spread across the sky. As the sunlight hit the clouds at the dawn of the day, there was a faint orange light. From afar, it looked like a dreamlike world. Smoke and the sound of dogs barking came from the inn on the corner. These things didn't feel out of place. It was as if this was how everything should be. The few dogs raised by the shop were playing with each other and running around, shaking their tails. Shortly after, the sound of horseshoes hitting the ground came from the distance. In the distance, dust was being kicked up as several horses galloped by. Sitting on top of the horses were several burly men wearing robes. They all had serious expressions as they galloped by. As they approached, the dogs whimpered and avoided the road. The horses quickly passed by with the wind. Perhaps the sound of the horses was so loud that it caused the ground outside the inn to tremble, and even the inn itself seemed to tremble. This inn was very humble and seemed to have existed for a long time. As it trembled, it emitted sounds as if it couldn't withstand this trembling. Cries of shock came from the second floor of the inn. Don't worry. This old man's shop has been here for over 100 years. And this happens every time horses rush by. It won't collapse. An ancient voice echoed across the inn. In the corner of the hall sat a small old man wearing coarse clothes. He held a pipe in his hand and leisurely smoked it. Opposite him, the waiter from last night put a towel over his shoulder and brought a kettle of hot water to the guests in the rooms on the second floor. At this moment, in the rightmost room on the second floor, there was a young man still wearing his clothes lying on the bed. The entire room was filled with the smell of alcohol. As the horses passed by and the room trembled, the young man slowly opened his eyes. He placed his hand on his forehead and looked around in a daze. Alas, greed is wrong. How did I drink so much wine? The young man looked 18 or 19 years old. He was slender and plain-looking, and he gave off the aura of a scholar. He put on a bitter smile, and his head hurt as he stood up holding the side of his bed. He staggered to the table and poured himself a cup of cold tea. Only after drinking it did he feel slightly better. It looks like I have to be careful in the future about getting drunk. I lost consciousness last night. If I only lost my silver, that would be small, but if I lost my life, the young man sighed and drank a few more cups of cold tea. Just at this moment, a knocking sound came from the door, and the voice of the waiter echoed. Hot water. Does guest want any? The young man quickly got up. He seemed to have stood up too fast and became dizzy again. He barely managed to speak. Come in. The door opened with a creak, and the waiter walked in with the kettle. After filling the basin with hot water, he looked back at the young man and smiled. I have been a waiter here for 3 days. I have never seen anyone get drunk from the rice wine here after only 2 cups. Last night, no matter how much I pushed you, you wouldn't wake up, and I had to bring you up here to rest. Little brother is not good with alcohol, so you need to practice. I heard that all the officials at the capital can drink 1,000 cups without falling. The young man's face turned slightly right, and his eyes became filled with gratitude. He got up and clasped his hands. Thank brother for your care. I don't know what went wrong either. The first cup felt fine, but once the second cup entered my stomach, I fell on the ground, drunk. The waiter grinned, and as he was leaving with the kettle, he had a playful smile. He looked at the young man and said, "You coming here to test for an official position, right? When you were drunk last night, you said you had a dream where you became an immortal. Haha, what you said was very interesting. If you have time, come talk to me again. It was very fun." As they spoke, the waiter walked out with a gentle smile. The young man's face turned flushed, and he shook his head bitterly. After the waiter left, the young man washed his face with hot water and washed away a lot of the drunkenness from last night. He opened the window, and the cool wind came in along with the bright sunshine. This wind felt very good when it blew on his face. It made the young man let out a deep breath. The young man stood by the window and looked outside as he muttered to himself, "After getting drunk last night, I really had a dream. That dream was very strange, and I haven't forgotten any of it. That dream was very realistic, almost impossible to separate from reality. It actually started 3 years ago when fourth uncle arrived. I joined the Hangyu sect. Hey, it was interesting, but the dream didn't seem to finish, and I only remember joining the Hangyu sect. Hangyu sect, how could such a sect exist? How can there be immortals? Scholars like me don't believe in the power of ghosts. It is mostly rumors to fool people." The young man shook his head and looked at the cup on the table. His childish heart showed as he formed the seal from his memory and pointed at the cup. "Attraction spell." The young man smiled and pointed at the cup. That cup didn't move at all. It just calmly stayed there. The young man laughed and muttered, "These spells are very interesting." After playing around for a bit, the young man cleared his mind and tidied up his things. His clothes, money, dried food, pen, ink, and books were all there. Then, he carefully cleaned the room and waited for the smell of wine to dissipate before he changed into clean clothes. Then he put the bamboo backpack on his back and walked out of the room. He had been very smart ever since he was young, but his personality was very simple. He grew up in a mountain village, and this was his first time leaving home. The kind gaze of his parents followed him as he left the mountain village. He was like a baby bird that was going to spread his wings. This room had become dirty and smelled of alcohol due to him. He'd rather clean it up himself than let the waiter who had carried him up here do it. He simply ate some food on the first floor and paid his bills. Then he smiled at the waiter before he left, facing the sun. The gentle light fell on his body and filled the young man with sunshine as well. He gave off a very comfortable feeling, and people couldn't help but feel affection toward him. His clean clothes and neat attire were filled with vitality. Walking along the official road, he looked ahead, and he could faintly see the faraway capital of the country of Zhao. "Wang Lin, you can definitely do it. When I get a title, I'll bring my parents out from the mountain village, serve them until they grow old, and let them enjoy happiness." The young man took a deep breath and walked forward. The spring breeze blew by and brought the fragrance of flowers toward him. Wang Lin's clothes fluttered in the wind as he gradually walked further and further from the inn. The sound of the dogs barking was scattered by the wind and sent into some unknown place. The scattered sound slowly became fainter. A young man at 18 or 19 would often not know what tiredness was. As Wang Lin walked down the official road, his eyes were nimble. From time to time, he would stop and look at the surrounding mountain and forest as if it was very comfortable. The daylight passed by quickly. As Wang Lin leisurely walked down the road, the trees were no longer dense, and soon a river revealed itself. The sound of the river rushing came with the wind. In Zhao, there were several official roads that traveled with the waterways. Just like how on the left side of Wang Lin were mountains, and not far on his right was a river. There were several boats flowing down the river. The horizon gradually grew dark and dark clouds began to gather. Thunder rumbled in the distance and lightning moved within the dark clouds. They looked like silver snakes. The sky was clear during the day, but before night even arrived, clouds filled the sky and became unpredictable. The green mountains in the distance became dark due to the dark clouds. Although the clouds were dark, they couldn't completely cover the mountains. From afar, the mountain and the clouds seemed to be battling. The mountain wanted to pierce the clouds, but the clouds wanted to devour the mountain. It was like a battle of a dragon and a tiger. At this moment, the sound of thunder echoed and rain started to fall. Wang Lin quickly ran to a tree and took out a large umbrella from his bamboo backpack. This umbrella was skillfully made by his father and could be folded. Once opened, it could not only cover his bamboo backpack, but also his body under the umbrella. Holding the umbrella in his right hand, Wang Lin looked at the mountain in the distance that the dark clouds couldn't cover. He looked at the rain as it fell to the earth, fell on the leaves, fell on the surface of the river, creating ripples, and fell on the surface of the boats. The old saying goes, the black clouds are like black ink that can cover the mountains. The white rain jumps like beads into the boat. It turned out to be true. Wang Lin looked at all of this and laughed. Did a scholar like you become dumb? You see rain fall on my boat and you can still laugh. It really is infuriating. A crisp voice came from the boat close to the shore of the river. At the bow of the boat stood a pretty girl holding an umbrella. The young girl had a gloomy face as she stared at Wang Lin, and her jade-like hand pointed toward him. Wang Lin was startled and his laughter stopped. He scratched his head. Leo dreams of getting a lot of likes for this video, having many followers, plenty of shares, and everyone praising his good reading and the number of words he can read. So happy. The young girl was wearing a bright green dress and looked very beautiful. The pole of the umbrella looked like a tree trunk, and even the canopy looked like leaves. The thin lines looked like the veins of the leaves. Overall, it was very strange. The girl's skin was pink and very beautiful. With her eyebrows locked and her eyes glaring, she gave off a different sense of beauty. At this moment, the rain curtain was dividing the girl and Wang Lin as the raindrops fell into the river, splattering everywhere. As the rain fell, the sky and earth seemed to become one. Even the green mountains in the distance no longer looked like anything but part of the scenery. As Wang Lin looked at all of this, his face suddenly turned red. This was the first time he had left the mountain village, and he had never seen a girl this pretty. Comparing his playmates in the village to this girl was like comparing mortals to immortals. The girl originally had a gloomy expression, but after seeing Wang Lin stare at her and then turn red, she couldn't help but smile. Her mind, like the weather, always changing. Hey, bookworm, you've seen enough. The girl smiled and even her voice sounded like crisp bells. It swirled within the rain and entered Wang Lin's ears. Wang Lin's face, which was filled with a scholarly aura, became even more red, to the point that even the bases of his ears were red. He quickly bowed at the girl on the boat. It was rude. I hope Lady won't mind. The girl's laughter echoed. Looking at Wang Lin's silly expression, she was about to speak when a soft and gentle voice came from inside the boat. Junior sister. As the voice echoed, the corner of the canopy of the boat was opened by a jade-like hand, revealing the girl's delicate figure. When the girl's face entered Wang Lin's eyes, the rain in the world seemed to pause. A purple dress and eyes as bright as the moon. It was as if her appearance had caused the world to lose all color, as if her appearance had sucked all the light from the world. It was as if she was the only thing that existed in this world. She was very beautiful, but there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. They seemed to contain sadness, exhaustion, and hesitation. Anyone who saw these eyes would feel pity rise in their heart. They also contained a hint of annoyance as she looked at the girl in green. The girl in green smiled and pulled the girl in purple. She pointed at Wang Lin and her voice was like a songbird. Senior sister, this scholar is really rude. First he spoke rudely and then stared at me. But he looks kind of dumb and is interesting. The girl in purple smiled and her gaze followed the rain toward Wang Lin, who was hiding from the rain on the shore. When she saw him, she was startled for a moment. After taking a closer look, there was a flash of confusion in her eyes. I feel like I've seen him somewhere before. Wang Lin's face became even more red as he was being watched by these two women. He coughed a few times and clasped his hands once more, not knowing what to say. He quickly turned away to look at the mountain and dark clouds to calm his rapidly beating heart. Wang Lin, you have read so many books. How can you look at two girls like that? It's best to be calm. Once the rain stops, I should continue on my way. Wang Lin took a deep breath of the rainy air and slowly calmed his heart. The girl in purple looked at Wang Lin for a moment and softly said, Sir, I fear that the rain will last through the night until tomorrow. Since it is fate we meet, how about you come aboard and take shelter from the rain? There will be a place to stay at the next station. Although her words were light, they penetrated the rain and spread out. This Wang Lin hesitated for a bit and looked up at the sky. The dark clouds were covering the sky, and the rain didn't seem like it would stop anytime soon. It might really last the night. We are allowing you take shelter on our boat from the rain with good intentions and you still hesitate? Do you think we will eat you or something? The girl in the bright green dress saw Wang Lin hesitate and stared at him. Junior sister. The girl in purple looked helplessly at the girl in green. Wang Lin smiled bitterly and nodded as he picked up his bamboo backpack. He held the umbrella as he walked through the muddy path toward the shore. The water and soil had fused together. As his steps fell, mud dyed the edge of his pants. The rain had made the ground slippery, and the shore was a bit slanted. While walking toward the river bank, Wang Lin slipped and was about to fall. A burst of fragrance flowed into his nose, and Wang Lin's falling body was supported by a delicate body. It was the girl in purple. Her feet gently kicked off the ground and jumped in a beautiful arc onto the boat with Wang Lin. "Many thanks, my lady." Wang Lin stood on the boat, his face bright red. "Sir, you don't need to be polite. Please, sit." The girl in purple loosened her hand and sat down with a giggle. The girl in green put away her umbrella and sat down next to the girl in purple and began to observe Wang Lin. Wang Lin's heart pounded. From his birth to now, he had never been this nervous. He sat opposite of the two girls after putting down his bamboo backpack. His forehead was already covered in sweat from embarrassment. "Sir, you don't need to be nervous." When the girl in purple saw Wang Lin's appearance, she smiled. She raised her hand and lit up the candle. The fire flashed and lit up the room. The more the girl in green looked at Wang Lin's expression, the more interesting she found him. This caused Wang Lin to feel even more embarrassed. "This scholar is named Wang Lin. I greet you two ladies. Thank you for allowing me to stay on the boat." Wang Lin took a deep breath before he got up and clasped his hands at the two girls. The boat leisurely floated down the river as the rain fell. Although the three were sheltered from the rain, the sound of the rain hitting the canopy could still be heard. The sound of the rain hitting the boat and the river gradually fused together into a wonderful spring song. From afar, as the sky darkened, the boat gradually became hidden inside the rain. A gentle light came from the boat and gave off an inexplicable sense of warmth in the cold spring rain. "Wang Lin, why do I feel like I have seen him somewhere before? Even his name feels very familiar." The girl in purple looked at Wang Lin, and the confusion from before appeared again. "Eh? Your name is Wang Lin? I feel like I've heard that name before." The girl in green carefully looked at Wang Lin and pondered. The girl in green thought for a long time and finally raised her head. She smiled at Wang Lin and said with her beautiful voice, "Strange. I don't think I have ever seen you before, and I've never heard your name before. My name is Xu Fei, and this is my senior sister Zhou. As for her name, you should ask yourself." Xu Fei winked, looking very cute. "This one is named Zhou Rui," the girl in purple said softly. There was still confusion in her eyes, especially since even Xu Fei felt that Wang Lin's name was familiar. She just couldn't figure out why. As time passed and the clouds in the sky thinned, the moon would sometimes appear but would soon be covered again. The rain became stronger and stronger, and the sound of raindrops falling replaced everything. The wind blew in moisture and caused the candle fire to wobble. Wang Lin felt cold, but he saw that the two girls looked normal, as if they hadn't noticed the cold wind at all. The rain rattled, and the world outside the curtain was dark. As Wang Lin looked, he suddenly entered a trance. In the dark night and quiet river, it felt like this boat was the only thing that remained. The two beautiful girls in the boat gave off a feeling that none of this was real. Wang Lin's body felt cold during his trance. His vision blurred and he felt sleepy, but he held himself back. He leaned against the wall and slowly said, "You two ladies refer to each other as junior and senior sister. Lady Zhou also leaped onto the boat carrying me. You two must be experts in the martial arts world." "We are not people from the martial arts world. You are bookworm. We are people who cultivate toward immortality, real immortals." The vague voice seemed to come from farther and farther away, as Wang Lin became even more sleepy. He faintly felt as if someone was speaking about the Hengyu sect. "Am I dreaming again?" Wang Lin closed his eyes and passed out. The boat shook gently and even the candlestick shook. The girl in green looked at the girl in purple with a confused expression. "Senior sister, he is only a mortal. Why did you use a spell to make him sleep?" The girl in purple looked at the sleeping Wang Lin. After a long time, she softly said, "I must have seen this person before. However, I just can't remember where. Even you said his name sounded familiar." Wang Lin, the girl in the bright green dress frowned, and there was also confusion in her eyes. A moment later, the girl in purple shook her head and sighed. "Forget it, let's not think about this matter. Perhaps we met in a previous life." "Previous life?" The girl in the green dress laughed and looked at the dark sky outside. "Senior sister, it is about time. We have to go meet with Wang Zhuo. This time, the sect master noticed a golden light from the east and calculated that a treasure might be born. A lot of sects might go searching. Although our cultivation levels aren't high enough to participate, it will be a good experience. 3,000 words in a major chapter. Wish that the like button for the video would break. The girl in purple gently nodded and got up with the girl in green. Just as they were about to leave, she turned to look at Wang Lin as if she wanted to engrave his appearance in her heart. Just as she was about to leave, the girl in purple hesitated for a moment. The girl in green had already left the boat and was flying using the attraction spell. "Senior sister, let us go." The girl's voice echoed through the rain. The girl looked at Wang Lin's body that was trembling and shrunk into a corner and silently walked over. Her jade-like hand touched her bag of holding and a thick coat appeared in her grasp. She gently covered Wang Lin with the coat and murmured, "Is it really in the past life?" The girl sighed and left. The rain became more and more intense. The rain fell as the lonely boat floated on the river, giving off an inexplicable feeling. This was the aura of loneliness. Ripples echoed in the water as the boat drifted down the river. The boat gradually went further and further away and gradually disappeared into the lonely night. Only the faint lamp in the boat could still be seen wobbling in the darkness. From afar, the wobbling fire from the boat was like a lonely leaf floating down the river as it gradually sailed to the end of a dream. The sound of rain hitting the boat continued, but Wang Lin was having a sweet dream under the canopy. The coat around his body had a faint fragrance that entered his nose and was brought into his dream. "Shufei senior sister Josie Wang Zhuo Wang Hao Zhang Hu," Wang Lin murmured in his sleep. If those two girls hadn't left and heard Wang Lin's words, they would be shocked. But now they couldn't hear him. Wang Lin's dream was like another life. In that dream, he saw Shufei in the Hengyue sect and also senior sister Zhou on the mountain of the Hengyue sect. There was also a white bird that flashed by. After a long time, the little candle flame gradually extinguished and became one with the night. The rain stopped early in the morning. The horizon gradually brightened, but it hadn't completely scattered the darkness. The world was still dim, and it seemed to make people's mood dim as well. The rain overnight had caused the river to rise a bit higher. Although it was difficult to notice with the naked eye, the shore of the river made it very obvious. The rain fell on the soil and formed large amounts of mud that flowed into the river. A boat slowly floated down the river and got closer and closer to the shore. In the end, the boat ran into the mud on the shore and stopped. Inside the canopy, Wang Lin's head hit the wall of the boat when it hit the shore. He opened his eyes in pain and confusion as he slowly remembered what happened last night. However, looking around, the two girls from before were gone without a trace. Last night was like a dream. The beautiful figures of those two girls lingered in Wang Lin's mind. Was it an illusion? Wang Lin was confused and looked at the coat covering him. It obviously belonged to a girl. He gradually awakened. However, in his mind, aside from the two girls' figures, there was also that extremely real dream. He saw those two girls in that dream. All of this confused Wang Lin greatly. The candlestick had extinguished a while ago. This made the inside of the canopy barely visible. After a long time, Wang Lin walked out from the canopy and looked at the dim world. The surroundings were hazy, so he couldn't see too far. The wind blew by, and while it was cold, it also allowed him to smell the fragrance of the soil. He let out a deep breath. Could it really have been a dream? Wang Lin stood at the bow. After the rain stopped, the area was extremely silent. This silence made it seem as if Wang Lin was the only one left in this world. Looking around, Wang Lin felt a sense of loneliness spreading from his body for some unknown reason. As he looked at the dim sky, this sense of loneliness became even stronger. The wind blew by, causing his black hair to flutter behind him. The wind couldn't flatten the folds on his clothes. A bit cold, Wang Lin lowered his head. He didn't know why that sense of loneliness had suddenly become so strong. This loneliness made him think of home, of his parents, of everything, and also of that woman he couldn't seem to remember. It seemed like an invisible force had gathered in his body and caused two streams of tears to flow. "Why would I cry?" Wang Lin raised his hand and wiped away a drop of tear that was like a drop of rain. Wang Lin's eyes were filled with endless sadness and sorrow that he didn't even notice himself. "What's wrong with me?" Wang Lin lowered his head and sat down, ignoring the wet surface of the boat. In the serenity of the dawn, tears fell and fused with the wet surface of the boat. This feeling, like he was the only one left in the world, was very familiar to him. It was as if he had felt like this for a long time, walking silently through the world and savoring the sense of loneliness by himself. Wang Lin gradually entered a trance as if there was an abyss before him. This abyss had endless suction force that seemed to be able to drag the sky down into it. Deep inside the abyss, there was a crack, and a lonely figure sat inside. That place was also very quiet, with only the sound of the suction force. The lonely figure had its back toward him. Although Wang Lin couldn't see the face of the figure, he could feel the loneliness and sadness from the figure. In a trance, he saw a young man wearing white with white hair silently walking through the stars. His figure also gave off a sense of loneliness. He saw a lot, and the tears from his eyes gradually fell. This sadness came from his soul in this world. It was as if this world was his soul, his dream. At this moment, he found this familiar sense of silence and loneliness here. Under the dim sky, Wang Lin looked at the water for a long time. It wasn't until the cold wind blew by again, causing him to feel very cold, that he subconsciously lifted his left hand and pointed at the candlestick not far away. The candle slowly ignited. Wang Lin didn't even realize this himself. His eyes were filled with sadness and the sorrow that came from nowhere as if it was eternal. In this silence and dimness, the burning candlestick slowly lit up the surrounding area as it flickered. Although it was weak, it gave off a sense of warmth as it struggled to burn. Looking from far away, the figure on the boat gave off a sense of desolation. As time passed, the sky gradually light up, the darkness scattered from the earth, river, and boat. The surroundings gradually cleared up, and what was in the distance became clear. Only the rolling black clouds still moved through the sky. A bird that was like a dot flew off from the mountain and rushed into the black clouds. After piercing through, it flew around a few times before it flew toward Wang Lin. Soon, the bird closed in and Wang Lin raised his head to look at the white bird. The white bird seemed to look down at Wang Lin. Wang Lin could notice a detectable trace of sadness, and that startled him as the bird disappeared into the distance. When the bird left, the sorrow in Wang Lin's heart slowly dissipated. The fire on the candlestick slowly extinguished. What's wrong with me? Wang Lin seemed to have awakened and stared at the drop of tear that was still on his finger. He watched as the crystal drop of tear fall. After a long time, Wang Lin stood up and packed up his things with that confusion and inexplicable sadness. He put the girl's coat in his backpack and walked off the boat. The moment he walked off the boat, he looked back at the boat before walking off into the distance. However, just at this moment, a howl came from the rolling clouds in the distance. The moment this shocking sound rang out, Wang Lin subconsciously looked up and saw an unimaginable scene. Rays of light that seemed to be able to pierce the heavens flashed through the black clouds. One of the rays of light suddenly stopped above Wang Lin, revealing a woman wearing blue. She looked down, and her gaze met Wang Lin's gaze. A confusion appeared in her eyes. A handsome young man walked out from the other ray of light and gently asked, "What's wrong, junior sister Liu?" "Nothing. I feel like I have seen that scholar somewhere before." The woman shook her head and flew off into the distance. "A mere mortal. We should quickly go meet with teacher and go to the place that released the golden light." The young man looked at Wang Lin before withdrawing his gaze and looking at the woman. 3,000 words in a major chapter, hoping to be shared, hoping to get the like button hit for the video. Wang Lin stared at the sky and the two rays of light disappearing into the distance. "Who is she? Very familiar, Wang Lin murmured, feeling a sting of pain in his heart. This fused with the inexplicable sadness and turned into a strange force that caused Wang Lin's breathing to become rushed and his face to turn pale. His body staggered and he retreated a few steps as his gaze toward the horizon collapsed. His right hand pressed against his chest where the stinging pain was coming from. The pain washed over him like a tide. It was an unspeakable pain, as if his heart was being torn apart, and a sense of melancholy surfaced. All of this came from the woman that flew through the sky. The woman seemed to exist in Wang Lin's mind for countless years, but the thoughts accompanying that figure were very complicated. After a long time, a tinge of color returned to Wang Lin's face. He breathed heavily and closed his eyes. "So, immortals really exist then? Is my dream really a dream?" Wang Lin silently pondered as he stood on the damp dirt after the rain. It wasn't until the sky was completely bright that he opened his eyes in a daze and silently walked forward. Did I dream of an immortal, Or did an immortal dream of me? Wang Lin didn't understand. It was as if that drunken dream before had changed the trajectory of his life. Wang Lin stepped onto the main road and walked toward the capital once more. He no longer had the urge to observe his surroundings, but silently walked with the bamboo backpack on his back. His footsteps caused crunching sounds to echo as he walked. The sun rose, the sun set. Wang Lin walked along the official road the entire day. When he was tired, he would sit on the side and take out some dried food to eat. After resting a bit, he would continue on. When the sounds of horses and carriages would drift in from the distance, Wang Lin would dodge to the side. Only after the carriages or horses passed would he return to the road. In the blink of an eye, 7 days passed. During these 7 days, Wang Lin's weak body gradually became stronger. From sunrise to sunset, Wang Lin walked on the road. If there was an inn on the road, he would rest. Or if he could see smoke from a village during sunset, then it would be even better. Wang Lin found it more comfortable than staying in an inn. However, most of the time, Wang Lin would have the illusion that he was the only one left in the world after the sun had set. He would find some shade along the road and cover himself in thick clothes. Then he would count the stars in the sky as he thought of the warmth of his home and his parents as he slowly fell asleep. The fire he had started crackled before him and gradually extinguished. The smoke rose into the air and seemed to fuse with the sky. The wind in the night was cold and would often wake Wang Lin up. Every time he woke up, he would look at the silent surroundings. He felt very familiar with this darkness, and he wasn't afraid. Instead, his head was calm as he looked around before falling back asleep again. This was the rainy season in the country of Zhao. Even if the rain stopped, the sky would be covered in dense clouds and thunder would echo. The rain would often stop for half a day before falling again. Make yours! On the dusk of the 8th day, Wang Lin propped up his umbrella and rushed forward with a wry smile. The rain fell outside his umbrella and thunder rumbled. Although it was only dusk, the sky was already dark. One more day of travel and I'll reach the capital, but this rain is getting more and more intense. Water covered the ground, so as the rain fell, drops of water would bounce off the ground and land his clothes. His green robe became soaked and constantly sucked away the heat in his body. This slowly made Wang Lin feel very cold. When the moist wind blew, the coldness was bone-chilling. Wang Lin shivered and placed his umbrella to mostly cover his bamboo backpack. There were books and dried food inside, along with his replacement clothes. Those things couldn't be drenched. Wang Lin quickly walked through the rain and looked around for some place to take shelter. In the distance, he vaguely saw the shape of a house. He didn't have time to look closely, but Wang Lin propped his umbrella and walked closer. When he got closer, he saw that it was an abandoned temple. Creaking sounds echoed in this rainy night, giving off a sinister feeling as it entered one's ears. The temple wasn't large and was broken. There were 2 doors to the temple, with one closed. The red paint on the door had faded, and the ring on the door was covered in rust. Rain gathered on the rusted ring and dripped down. The other temple door was broken badly. Although it was still slightly connected to the frame, it could no longer be closed. It constantly rocked under the wind and rain, giving off the creaking sound Wang Lin was hearing. As wind and rain became larger, the door rocked even more violently, as if it was going to be blown off the frame. Wang Lin quickly walked closer and looked at the temple before walking in. The yard of the temple was covered in gravel and weeds. The wind and rain caused the weeds to bend, and the rattling of the rain mixed in with the creaking door. There was a flash of lightning followed by rumbling thunder that lit up the world, allowing Wang Lin to see everything inside the temple. Wang Lin exclaimed and subconsciously took a few steps back. He saw several white skeletons at the edge of the temple. His heart pounded and his face turned pale, but the rain was getting heavier. He clenched his teeth and ignored the bones of the people that had died here an unknown amount of years ago as he walked into the temple. A large statue dozens of feet tall was inside the temple. It was impossible to see its appearance, and its color had long faded. It was broken everywhere. There was water inside the temple. Many of the roof tiles were broken, so rain fell in, causing a lot of water to gather in the ground. A cold aura surrounded this temple. Wang Lin took a deep breath and his face turned pale. He first bowed toward statue before finding a place without water to place his bamboo backpack. Then he placed some dried branches before him and tried to light them. These branches weren't completely dry, so Wang Lin failed to light them up after many attempts. His body was very cold, and he trembled as he attempted to light them again. However, just at this moment, a bolt of thunder exploded inside the temple. The resulting rumble caused Wang Lin's hands to shake. A huge shadow appeared and surrounded the area. Ooh! Wang Lin suddenly looked up, suppressing the shock in his heart, and looked at the door. His voice was very loud, almost a roar. Just as the thunder dispersed, it caused the person who was about to enter the temple to tremble in fear. Whoo! A frightening voice came from outside. A middle-aged man wearing rags who seemed to have just climbed out of the water took a few steps back before falling over. After taking a closer look at Wang Lin inside the temple, the middle-aged man relaxed a bit. He quickly entered the temple and glared at Wang Lin. Then he vigorously patted his chest and roared at Wang Lin. "You scared me." Wang Lin was startled for a moment and revealed a wry smile. He relaxed and then clasped his hands at the middle-aged man and apologized. The night was dark and I couldn't see clearly. The thunder also came too suddenly, so I hope Brother 1T mind. The middle-aged man snorted, and after muttering for a bit, he no longer paid attention to Wang Lin. He sat down on the side and reached into his sleeve to take out half of a wet chicken leg. While looking at it, he burst into tears. His cry was extremely sad in this rainy night, and this caused Wang Lin to feel a chill. Wang Lin moved further away and finally lit up the branches before him. Under the flickering fire, everything inside the temple became more clear. The middle-aged man cried and cried as he took a bite of the wet chicken leg before he started to grin. Then he let out a loud laugh, which startled Wang Lin. A madman Wang Lin moved further away. If not for the rain outside, he would have chosen to leave. Although this was next to the official road, if a madman appeared in the middle of a rainy night, it was still chilling. The middle-aged man laughed and laughed before crying again. "They don't care about me. They don't care about me. I can remember who I am." His cries filled the temple and made Wang Lin feel pity. He turned to look at the madman and sighed. The lifelike dream before one awakens. Life is like a play, but who am I dreaming is living and waking up is dying? Or the dream is dying and waking up is living. The moments of closing and opening the eyes are the moments of life and death. Or perhaps it is when one can separate the real and fake lives. This life is a reincarnation cycle, and perhaps it is also a karmic cycle. However, when will I awaken? Wang Lin murmured, then confusion filled his eyes. During these days, his dreams had caused him to become confused. As he thought for the past 7 days, he vaguely felt something. With a sigh, Wang Lin took out dried food from his backpack and looked at the fire before him. He listened to the rain outside the temple and began to silently eat the dried food. The rain leisurely fell from the sky, shrouding the mountain, the earth, and the temple. In this temple, next to the fire, 2 dream souls that didn't seem to belong to this world entered. One looked at the fire and one gnawed at the chicken leg. The statue between the 2 of them had an elusive smile as if it was looking at the 2 of them. Tonight there will be 2 to 3 new chapters. Leo will do his utmost to make up for the chapters missing from the last 2 days. In a trance, Wang Lin looked at the fire, but he was interrupted by the sound of swallowing saliva. He looked around to see the middle-aged man not far away looking at the dried food in his hand. The middle-aged man constantly licked his lips and revealed a pitiful look. Looking at the man, Wang Lin smiled. At this moment, he didn't feel like the middle-aged man was a stranger. He just felt pity. "Here you go." Wang Lin took out dried food from his bamboo backpack and passed it to the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man's eyes widened, and after swallowing his saliva, he rushed over. He grabbed the dried food and devoured it in just 2 bites. "Delicious, delicious. This king hasn't eaten for several days, eh? Why do I call myself king?" The middle-aged man frozen for a moment and shook his head. He no longer thought about it and looked pitifully at Wang Lin. Wang Lin took out a few more pieces of dried food and handed them over. He softly asked, "What's your name? Why are you here? Where is your family?" The middle-aged man gave him an unspeakable reason. The more he made contact with this middle-aged man, the stronger the feeling became. It was as if they knew each other before, and now there was a feeling of guilt in his heart. The middle-aged man took the dried food and was about to eat. He was startled by Wang Lin's words and then began to cry as he looked at the dried food in his hand. "I don't know what my name is. When I woke up, I was in the mountains. I can think of anything golden light. I remember waking up surrounded by golden light and a lot of people trying to catch up. But they can find me. The middle-aged man cried, and his voice became blurry. Wang Lin's gaze became even more gentle. Seeing the man devouring his dried food, which he didn't have much of left, in a few bites again, he shook his head and smiled. He then took out his water pouch and handed it to the madman. The middle-aged man drank a few big mouthfuls and then let out a hiccup. He looked at the smiling Wang Lin and handed over the chicken leg and hat in his hand. Here you go, this chicken leg is not tasty anymore. Wang Lin smiled and took the chicken leg. He didn't eat it but wrapped it and placed it inside his backpack. The rain outside the temple became even heavier, with the thunder rumbling and lightning flashing. The temple's door continued to swing with the wind and would sometimes hit the wall. Aside from the creaking sounds, there was now also the sound of the door banging on the wall. The entire world became dark, with only the fire in the temple leaking out. It was a faint light in this dark world. Wang Lin and the middle-aged man sat next to the fire. Warmth slowly appeared within their wet clothes. Wang Lin looked at the fire and softly said, "Perhaps it's good to not know who you are. Sometimes, even if you know who you are, you can help but think you in someone else's dream. I have been dreaming a lot lately. And that dream is so real, I can separate it from reality." The middle-aged man drank a mouthful of water and murmured as he shook his head. "Says who? Try to think of how painful it is not knowing who you are." If it was me, it wouldn't matter if it was a dream as long as I am happy. As long as I am happy, it's all good. Wang Lin's eyes narrowed. The man's words touched him. As long as I am happy, then it's all good. My dream is to pass the imperial examen so that my parents can have a good life and not be looked down upon by our relatives. Wang Lin silently pondered for a long time and then nodded. Wang Lin looked up. He put more dried branches into the fire and asked, "What are you? What are your dreams?" The middle-aged man yawned and seemed sleepy. When he heard Wang Lin, he suddenly became spirited and began speaking excitedly. "Me, I have many dreams. I want a lot of spirit stones. I want a lot of silver. I want a lot of delicious food." As he spoke, he swallowed. "What is a spirit stone?" Wang Lin was startled. "Spirit stone? I said spirit stone, but what is spirit stone?" The middle-aged man was also startled. He scratched his head and looked at Wang Lin. Wang Lin silently pondered for a bit, and then smiled. He didn't question more and began to talk with the madman. The two of them seemed to have endless words to say to each other. The madman was originally sleepy, but the more he spoke, the more excited he became. He didn't know why, but Wang Lin gave him a warming feeling, like a relative. The wind outside howled and would occasionally blow into the temple, causing the fire to flicker. It would also bring in a chill, but it no longer made the two of them feel cold. Even the elusive smile from the statue behind them slowly softened. A sense of warmth shrouded the temple and dispersed the coldness here. It was late into the night, but not only had the rain not stopped, it had become even stronger. The fire before Wang Lin slowly weakened because dried branches weren't added, so it seemed like it could go out at any moment. "I'll tell you a secret. I have never told this secret to anyone else," the middle-aged man said to Wang Lin mysteriously. Wang Lin looked at him and nodded with a smile. He revealed a look of interest. The middle-aged man stretched out his right hand before Wang Lin. What do you see?" The middle-aged man pointed at his right wrist and became even more smug. However, aside from it being dirty, there was nothing there. Wang Lin looked at it for a while and bitterly shook his head. You can see anything?" "Impossible. Wait and let me go wash." The middle-aged man quickly ran to some water in the temple and washed his right arm. Then he returned to Wang Lin, raised his right hand again, and mysteriously whispered, "You see it now?" Wang Lin's expression turned strange, and he shook his head again. He indeed didn't see anything. The middle-aged man became furious and roared at Wang Lin. "Take a closer look, widen your eyes, and take a look. How can you not see?" "You liar, you clearly see it." Wang Lin rubbed his forehead and held the middle-aged man's right hand before his eyes. After looking for a bit, he smiled and nodded. "I see it, I indeed see it." Hey, I am good, right? I am going to find this person. He should know me." The middle-aged man sat on the side and looked at his arm. He slowly went into a daze. I need to find him. I faintly have a feeling that he promised to take care of me. He promised to take me to play, but he left no one is left to care about me. I am the only one left. I am going to find him. I have to find him. As he muttered, his expression dimmed and he curled up as he looked at his arm. His voice grew weaker until he fell asleep. Wang Lin let out a sigh and got up to take out a thick cloth. Not caring that the middle-aged man was dirty, Wang Lin placed his cloth over him. This seemed to disturb the middle-aged man, who grabbed the cloth and turned before falling back to sleep. His right arm was facing Wang Lin. Wang Lin sat next to the fire and watched the gradually weakening flames. He silently pondered in this silent temple with the rain still falling outside. His heart was no longer confused. Dreams were only dreams, nothing would change. Even if this was just a dream, he was still going to be happy. He was still going to walk forward with determination. Let's just say that dream is my other life, although that life was wonderful and even magnificent. The sadness and loneliness from that dream makes one's heart ache. Wang Lin seemed to gain an understanding of some things. At this moment the fire dimmed and completely extinguished. The smoke rose and darkness shrouded the temple once more. Wang Lin leaned against the pillar and was about to sleep while the middle-aged man snored. Just as he was about to close his eyes suddenly widened, and he turned to look at the middle-aged man. Now that the temple was dark, there was a faint, golden light coming from the middle-aged man. This light came from his wrist, where there was a faint palm print. It was as if an invisible hand had grabbed the madman's right wrist and left this print. Looking at the palm print, a very familiar feeling appeared in Wang Lin's heart. He was startled for a long time, and then looked at his own hand. However, the palm print was blurry, so it was impossible to make out. Wang Lin was startled for a long time and then shook his head. The rain fell all night and didn't stop until dawn. The fragrance of the earth permeated the world and drifted into the temple. One night, no dream. Wang Lin opened his eyes and stretched his body. Looking at the sky outside the temple, he stretched his stiff body. He looked at the middle-aged man, who was still snoring. The middle-aged man's right arm had returned to normal. The golden palm print could no longer be seen. Hiding the doubt in the bottom of his heart, Wang Lin packed his clothes and changed into a clean outfit. He then pushed the middle-aged man in a few times. Seeing the middle-aged man wake up, he clasped his hands and smiled. Our meeting last night can considered fate. My name is Wang Lin. I still have to take the imperial exam if we can. As Wang Lin was speaking, he stopped. The madman had his head lowered and looked crestfallen. After pondering a bit, Wang Lin kept one day of dried food and took out the rest. He placed it before the madman and whispered, I need to go. You can definitely find that person. Definitely. Somehow, he felt reluctant. He looked at the middle-aged man before letting out a sigh and heading out of the temple. However, before he walked out of the door, he heard the madman cry. They all left me. He left and you left. No one cares about me. Wang Lin's footsteps stopped, and he looked at the sky outside. After a moment, he turned around and looked at the crying middle-aged man inside the temple. He softly said, I am missing a book, boy. You're a bit old, but it should be no problem. At this moment, Wang Lin didn't know that what he had said was like a reincarnation cycle. Back when he first saw the madman, he faintly felt like he had seen him before. It was back in the human trial in the Fallen Land, where he saw another version of himself and the housekeeper-like book boy. That person held the wine and was constantly worried about the money for the wine. One, kinda like a servant, like there are a lot of different servant types where the title is just the related subject boy. They help the person with the related subject and is also their student in a way, as they get knowledge of the subject in return. Good night, everyone. We will meet again tomorrow. Just wait a moment. Remember to like the video. Chapter 15, Suspicion. Jiang Hu ran to the table in a daze. He tried to pour a cup of water from the container for a long time, but not a single drop came out. He rubbed his eyes and saw the bedding was crumpled into a ball. Then he stared at Wang Lin and said, Wang Lin, when did you come back? Did a ghost do this? Wang Lin smiled. Then he opened the door and said, I don't know. When I got back, it was already like this. Why don't you try asking the other disciples? However, if this gets to the elders, you would have to go through the trouble of explaining this and possibly get interrogated by them. Jiang Hu shook his head and said, Forget it, I want to ask. If I get questioned by the elders, it would be hard to avoid punishment. Wang Lin didn't mind him and walked out the door. It was still raining outside, so he quickened his pace, afraid that the bead would cause some disturbance in the rain. He took a deserted path to the eastern gate. All the water that fell on him was absorbed by the bead, and he was afraid someone would notice. At first he wanted to hide it in his room, but then decided it was safer to hide it outside. Wang Lin went to one of the places that he had previously hid a gourd containing dew. It was very early in the morning and not many people had awakened yet. He made sure no one followed him before burying the stone bead there. After that, he let out a sigh. He intended to wait for the rain to stop, then come back to take his treasure back. Wang Lin left very cautiously, making sure no one else was around, and made his way to the chore house. When he got there, he was just about to pick up a bucket when the weasel-faced, yellow-clothed disciple came out. Disciple Liu was a bit startled when he saw Wang Lin, but quickly changed his expression to one full of enthusiasm as he rushed forward to snatch the bucket from Wang Lin's grasp. He said, "If it isn't Brother Wang, how was your trip home? Are your parents doing well? Your senior has missed you on these days you were gone." Wang Lin was stunned. He was very familiar with that face. It was exactly same face his relatives had at the party, but Wang Lin wasn't sure what Disciple Liu was trying to do. "Brother Liu, my parents are doing well. You don't need to worry," Wang Lin carefully replied, as he wasn't sure what Liu was up to. Disciple Liu warmly said, as he puffed his chest, "Brother, from now on you don't have to wake up so early. Your big brother was joking with you, telling you to fill 10 vats a day, but you went and seriously believed me. From now on, you only need to fill 1 vat a day. Even if you don't finish in time, you can go eat when food is served. If anyone gives you any trouble, just tell your big brother." Wang Lin's face changed color. He hesitantly asked, "Big brother, is there some matter you wish for me to attend to?" Disciple Liu's face was full of discontent and pretended to be angry. "Little brother, how could you be so cold with your big brother? You are my little brother, and naturally I should care for you. In the future, your issues are my issues. As for these chores, just do some work to say you worked. In the end, if you do good or bad is just my opinion. Since it's raining today, you don't need to work. That right elder's son came looking for you a few days ago. Now that you're back, it's best to go check in with him." He finished speaking and watched Wang Lin's reaction carefully. Wang Lin muttered to himself and kept from laughing out loud. In his heart, he had guessed more than half the story after listening to the Disciple Liu. Elder's son must have come looking for him after he left, and Disciple Liu must be afraid of any grudge between them. That's why he is so friendly today. He didn't bother to point out the misunderstanding, and imitated what Disciple Liu did when they first met and snorted. Disciple Liu's heart skipped when he saw Wang Lin's expression. This confirmed his own suspicion. This trash really was living the dream, to be able to get the attention of an elder. Otherwise he wouldn't be so arrogant. This kid looked like one that would hold a grudge. He thought to himself, he will definitely take revenge on me later. Disciple Liu had been an honorary disciple for 13 years, and had spent 6 years at the chore house. He had never before seen an elder seeking out an honorary disciple personally. It was already a rare event for an inner disciple to be sent by an elder. It wasn't that he hadn't considered the fact that Wang Lin had offended the elder, but it was only his speculation. However, he wasn't sure. It wouldn't be an issue if he was right, but he was scared of what would happen if he was wrong. He had been in the Xianxia sect for many years, and knew exactly how insignificant he was. Thinking of this, he gritted his teeth and took out a piece of yellow paper, then handed it to Wang Lin. "Little brother, when senior brother saw you last month, I ignored you. This is just a little gift not worth anything. You have to accept it. If you don't." Before Lai could finish, Wang Lin had already grabbed the yellow paper. When he saw it earlier, he noticed it was the immortal talisman used when honorary disciples go home. "Thank you, senior brother. This little brother doesn't want to be arrogant, but elder is waiting for me. We will have to catch up next time," Wang Lin said while chuckling. Brother Liu was a bit envious as he nodded. "The elder is more important, little brother should go quickly." Wang Lin was calm on the surface, but on the inside, he had many doubts about elder son. Why did he personally come looking for him? Wang Lin leisurely walked to the courtyard with these questions in his head. He had gone thoroughly analyzed the situation, but in the end he couldn't come to a conclusion. Could he have found out about the stone bead? Wang Lin thought. He pondered the question for a bit. He didn't have the ability to bribe the elder, and if he didn't go, he would offend the elder. so he might as well pretend he didn't know anything. Since the bead was not on him, he stopped thinking about it and walked forward. Not long after he arrived at the courtyard and announced his presence, the same youth in white appeared and was surprised. He quipped, "What, you have to visit home again?" Wang Lin raised his brow. Right before he was about to speak, Elder Sun's voice came from within the courtyard. "Quickly, bring him here, without delay." The disciple in white's mouth twitched. He gave Wang Lin a thoughtful look, then headed back into the courtyard. Wang Lin followed silently. After arriving at Elder Sun's residence, the youth in white left. Before leaving, he shot Wang Lin a questioning look. Wang Lin was a bit nervous as he pushed open the gate and entered. The moment he entered, he saw an old man coming out from a room in the garden. The old man's face was full of wrinkles, his were eyes bright, and he scanned Wang Lin with a cool look. 4,000 words in a major chapter. Read an extra 1,000 words, wishing for the like button on the video to help. You are listening to a completely free audiobook on the Leo Audio YouTube channel. If you enjoy the story, please like the video to motivate the channel. Support Leo with a cup of coffee through the description link or on the screen. If you want to hear any other stories, just comment and let Leo know. Thank you very much for watching the video. Chapter 159, The Green-Robed Old Man. The green-robed old man sat on top of the gourd and looked up at the sky. He slapped the gourd and was just about to fly upward when his expression changed. He raised 2 fingers and pinched down on a crystal light that suddenly appeared in front of his face. He sneered, but that sneer immediately changed. The crystal light in between his fingers slowly disappeared. It was an afterimage. The old man suddenly moved his head as the crystal light brushed by his face. The crystal light flashed a few times before disappearing. The old man didn't stop, but his face was gloomy. He wiped the blood from his cheek with his finger. Then he placed his finger next to his mouth and licked the blood off before closing his eyes to think. This little guy is very bold. After a long time, he opened his eyes and slapped the gourd. The gourd shrank back to its original size. He opened up the gourd and took a drink. The liquid inside released the sweet scent of wine. Hu Fen. Although the disaster of the fire beasts was resolved by the rank cultivation country, the spiritual energy there was filled with fire element, making it impossible to cultivate. Adding on the fact that the ground was too hot, the country was mostly covered in lava, and volcanoes kept on erupting, turning the mortal kingdoms into patches of wasteland. The former imperial city was covered in lava, and all of the buildings were gone. There was no living creatures left in Hao Fen. The entire country was like a silent grave. Wang Lin and Li Muan quickly flew over the country. They both silently pondered as they saw what had become of Hao Fen. Although Wang Lin had some mixed feelings about all of this, if it wasn't for the heaven-defying bead absorbing the fire spirit, then he would have already been devoured by it. All of this could only be considered a coincidence. There was no right or wrong. If he was given a choice at that moment, even knowing the result, he would have still done the same thing. The two of them flew across the sky like a shooting star. Soon, they passed by the place where they first met. Li Muan looked at Wang Lin but didn't say a word. As for Wang Lin, he was thinking about the person chasing them and had no time to think about anything else. Wang Lin suddenly stretched his arm out behind him, and the crystal flying sword landed in his hand. Wang Lin suddenly stopped as he stared at the trace of blood on the flying sword. He smeared the blood onto his hand, and then, after staring at it for a while, his expression became very unsettled. He could feel dense spiritual energy from this blood. There was this much spiritual energy in this small amount of blood. Just what kind of cultivation level had this person reached? He took out a jade bottle and placed the blood inside. Right now, he felt like there was a mountain weighing down his heart. He looked at the giant punish above his head and sneered. Then he flew even faster while holding Li Muan. After quickly crossing the border of Hao Fen, they could see the mountain where the Hao Fen Union had originally built their base. The 4 flags of Hao Fen were hung high on the top of the mountain, signifying that this area belonged to the Hao Fen Union. After they arrived here, Wang Lin stopped. He pondered for a bit and then said, "I'll be sending you off." Li Muan bit her lower lip as she looked behind them and said, "How about you follow me back to Lu Hisek to hide for a bit?" Wang Lin calmly said, "No need." With that, he hesitated for a bit while looking at Li Muan. He slapped his forehead and Li Muan's soul essence blood flew out. Wang Lin didn't immediately return it, but left a trace of his Jaya realm inside it before returning it. Wang Lin slowly said. Thank you for these past 4 years. I have left a sliver of my divine sense in your soul essence blood. Anyone below the nascent soul stage will no longer be able to harm you. Li Muwan revealed a complicated look and asked, will we have a chance to meet in the future? Wang Lin pondered for a bit before letting out a sigh. He didn't answer the question but took something out from his bag of holding and handed it to Li Muwan. It was the 100 beast pill furnace. He had gotten it back after killing Kun Sang. Li Muwan took the 100 beast pill furnace. After looking at it for a while, she raised her head and said, these are pills I have made in the past few years. The jade has an explanation of all of them. With that, she took out more than 10 small bottles and passed them to Wang Lin, along with a piece of jade. After Wang Lin received them, he put them into his bag of holding. He then looked at Li Muwan and clasped his hands. 4 years ago, I promised to bring you back here safely. Now that I have, we no longer owe each other anything. Goodbye. Wang Lin was about to leave when Li Muwan suddenly shouted, Senior brother, this is my gift to you. With that, she took out a white jade and threw it at Wang Lin. Then, without looking back, she flew toward the Hufan Union. Wang Lin caught the jade and scanned it. The message Li Muwan left inside echoed in his ears. Senior brother Wan Air doesn't too know what your name is because you've never told me in these past 4 years. I believe you don't to know mine either. Wan Air, thanks you for the countless times you have saved me in these past 4 years. The time I spent in the Sea of Devils is something I'll never forget since our separation is inevitable, and Wan Er knows that senior brother goes into closed-door cultivation a lot. Wan Er is gifting you this jade. This jade is the epitome of Wan Er's formation skills. It contains the Fighting Evil Sect S Battle Dragon formation with improvements. This formation is a fusion of attack and defense, but compared to attack, defense is the true purpose of his formation. If it can protect senior brother for a while when you encounter danger, then Wan Er is satisfied. Holding the jade, listening to Li Muwan's words, and watching her figure disappear into the distance, Wang Lin began to ponder. He put away the jade, then his body suddenly landed on the ground. After taking one step, he disappeared. After moving far away, he touched his forehead and his body disappeared in a flash of light. He entered the heaven-defying bead, and at this moment, his presence disappeared. Wang Lin had already decided that he would enter the heaven-defying bead after bringing Li Muwan back. The kill order was going to last 100 days. For him, it was just a few extra days of cultivation inside the heaven-defying bead. This was also why, even though he knew of the danger of the kill order, he still killed Qian Kun. The old man chasing Wang Lin quickly arrived in Hofeng. He arrived at the spot where Wang Lin disappeared shortly after he entered the heaven-defying bead. The old man's face was filled with doubt as his body descended further into the ground. After searching for a while, he came out of the ground with an even stronger look of doubt than before. Gone, even the connection between the soul blood essence is gone. It seems that little guy has quite a few secrets. Just at this moment, he suddenly raised his head and looked without any expression at the 3 rays of light flying at him. Soon, the 3 rays of light arrived, revealing 1 woman and 2 men. The woman was wearing a formal dress. She looked very high-statured. To her left was a very handsome man in black robes. He had an overall very elegant presence. To the woman's right was a tall, red-faced old man. The old man's face was different from normal people's. His eyes were like 2 large bells and his pupils were like 2 burning flames. The old man looked at the 3 and calmly asked, "Why are you 3 here?" That woman was Feng Luan, and as for the elegant, scholarly-looking man, it was without a doubt her cultivation partner, Yang Sen. As for the old man, he was one of the nascent soul ancestors from the war god shrine. His cultivation level was the same as Yang Sen's. Yang Sen looked at the old man with dread because he couldn't see through the old man's cultivation. He clasped his hands and asked, "Is fellow cultivator from Xuanwu?" The old man rolled his eyes and said, "Who is your fellow cultivator? Scram, or else I am going to take your nascent soul and use it to refine treasures." Yang Sen's expression changed. He sneered and was about to speak when the red-faced man stopped him. His bell-like eyes stared at the 7 golden plum flowers on the old man's clothes and asked, "Is your excellency from the Sea of Devils?" Yang Sen and Feng Luan looked at each other before looking at the golden plum flower on the old man's shirt. The old man frowned and became impatient. He waved his hand and the 3 of them were pushed back. A powerful wind pushed them far away. Even the nascent souls in their bodies felt like they were going to be blown out. After they were finally able to stop themselves, the three S expressions became gloomy and Yang Sen asked, "What cultivation level?" The red-faced old man bitterly replied, "At least late-stage nascent soul." Fang Luan frowned and whispered, "Zubin, what was that golden plum flower? I believe the two of you heard about this before. 300 years ago, before I entered the war god shrine, I traveled through the Sea of Devils. My early-stage nascent soul cultivation was enough to keep myself safe as long as I didn't enter any dangerous areas. The Sea of Devils has a total of 999 cities, and a bit more than 300 of them are in the inner sea. Among those or so cities, 7 of them are called the Land of 7 Plums. The 7 cities connected form the petal of a plum flower. If you look from a distance, it does resemble it. There are a total of 7 city lords whose cultivation levels are unfathomable. Rumor has it that they have already reached the soul formation stage, but those rumors are not confirmed." Fang Luan's frown tightened as he asked, "That person just now?" The old man's expression became serious as he said, "If I'm not wrong, then that person just now was one of the city lords of one of the 7 cities. However, the demonic cultivators of the Sea of Devils, especially ones from Inner Sea, don't leave the Sea of Devils so easily. I don't believe he will stay here for long." The 3 of them looked at each other. Each of them could feel the weight on each other's hearts. They went around the old man as they returned to the Hofen Union's mountain. The 3 of them sensed the aura of a foreign nascent soul cultivator earlier, so they came to check. However, they didn't expect the result to be someone so difficult to deal with. The old man wandered around the area for a bit before letting out a snort and spreading out his divine sense. This time he wasn't going to miss a thing. He carefully scanned the area from the ground to the sky. The old man's divine sense slowly swept the area. He gradually began to spread out further and further, until it even affected the Hofen Union. However, the old man didn't care. He swept the area several times but was still unable to find anything. "Brothers, have you not yet hit the like button for the VIDEO? Wish that the like button for the VIDEO would be hit." At this time, there were a lot of scholars from villages, towns, and cities all over the country of Zhao heading to the capital for the imperial exam. They were alone, like Wang Lin, or in groups 3 to 5, heading to the province capitals. Only after passing this exam could they head to the city of Su to take the second exam. The city of Su had become famous due to one person. His name was Su Dao, the country of Zhao's head scholar. His existence had caused the city of Su to become the capital of scholars in the country of Zhao. The person that stood out the most in the exam in the city of Su would become the chosen Su. All the chosen Sus would go to the capital of Zhao, where they would either soar into the sky or quietly leave. Wang Lin walked along the road, carrying the expectations from his parents and his own vision of the future. Behind him was the middle-aged man, now wearing new clothes. He had a bamboo backpack on his back, and he hummed a song he had heard in some unknown place. He looked very relaxed. The sky was gray, but there was no rain. However, the trace of water on the official road gave off a chilly aura. The soil and water seemed to fuse together, making the path very muddy. Originally, it would only take a bit over half a day to reach the city, but Wang Lin and the middle-aged man didn't see the city until dusk. The sunset released bursts of orange light that pierced through the clouds and landed on the city. At a glance, it gave off the sense of a road leading to the end. Finally here, Wang Lin let out a big breath and wiped away the sweat on his forehead. Along the way, he had experienced a lot of things. Thinking back, even he found it very strange. "Big fortune, the city is ahead of us. We are going to stay there for a while." Wang Lin smiled and looked at the book boy behind him. "I don't like that name." The middle-aged man shook his head with a bitter expression. "I think it's very good. That name is good." Wang Lin laughed and led Big Fortune to the city gate. After taking out the token he got from the village, they were examined by the soldiers and allowed inside. Although it was dusk, the city was still lively. There were many people on the street. They were scholars that had come from all over for the exam. Wang Lin arrived a bit late, so he and Big Fortune didn't find any open rooms even after checking 4 or 5 inns. Seeing the sky become darker and darker, Wang Lin became anxious. Luckily, the last inn had 1 empty room. Although the price was a bit high, thunder started rumbling across the sky. The rain that had stopped showed signs of appearing once more. Wang Lin clenched his teeth and had Big Fortune take out the silver. Big Fortune took out the silver he had been holding for Wang Lin. His heart ached as he took out a bit and unwillingly handed it over while muttering to himself. Not much silver heartache. I seem to have experienced something before and know that silver is very important. As he muttered, the waiter looked at Wang Lin and the middle-aged man with scorn. He lazily led them to the guest room. He had seen many scholars like Wang Lin. Some were generous and others were very poor like Wang Lin. Wang Lin had a simple personality. Although he had noticed the waiter's expression, he didn't take it to heart. The room wasn't big, but it was suitable for 2 people. However, a musty smell wafted out of the room when the door was opened, causing Wang Lin to frown. This kind of smell was unavoidable in this season unless it was a very good inn. After eating some simple food, Wang Lin lied on the bed with his cloth and looked at the oil lamp on the table. He could hear Big Fortune's loud snoring. The bedding gave off a sense of moisture, and it was very uncomfortable to lie in. After tossing around for a long time, Wang Lin still couldn't sleep, so he got up with a sigh. Big Fortune continued to snore as Wang Lin sat down at the table. He took out a book and began reading using the lamp on the table. As he read, thunder rumbled in the sky and lightning flashed. This thunder was very intense. This thunder didn't dissipate but lasted for a long time. The continuous rumbles awakened many people in the city. The wind blew even more strongly, making it seem as if the sky above the city was torn open. Endless wind howled and swept the earth. Large amounts of muddy sand were blown into the air, and rain continued to hit the window of every home. Popping sounds came from the window in Wang Lin's room, as if the wind was going to break through. Wang Lin wasn't able to focus on reading. He frowned and raised his head. Just at this moment, the window was suddenly violently pushed open by the wind. The 2 shutters started to hit the frame around them. The gusts of wind also brought in water through the window. The fire on the table was extinguished, and the room went dark. Wang Lin's hair was blown by the wind, and even his clothes fluttered violently. As the rain and wind invaded the room, even the book in Wang Lin's hand was almost blown away. Wang Lin exclaimed and quickly got up. He faced the wind and walked up to the window to close it. Just as he got close, thunderous rumbles echoed. It seemed like this violent sound was coming from the window, which shook Wang Lin's mind. Just at this moment, a bolt of lightning flashed before Wang Lin. A bright light flashed, shrouding the sleeping city. At this moment, Wang Lin saw a small portion of the city in the dark night. When he saw this, he was startled. He saw the white bird that he had seen in his dream on the way here. The white bird circled amidst the wind and thunder. It seemed to notice Wang Lin's gaze. The white bird looked at Wang Lin. At this moment, their gazes met. The thunder became even more intense and lightning flashed non-stop. As the sky flickered with the light from the lightning, Wang Lin's mind rumbled. He remained still, feeling as if some thoughts were slowly gathering in his mind. These thoughts eventually turned into a blurry voice. That voice was filled with confusion and sounded ancient. It echoed inside Wang Lin's mind. Karma, what is karma? Karma, what is it? Wind blew into the window and continued to hit Wang Lin's body. He stood in front of the window and allowed the wind to hit him, the rain to fall, the thunder to rumble, the lightning to flash. In his eyes, everything in the world beside that white bird had disappeared. The bird flapped its wings and turned into a ray of light that charged toward Wang Lin. It closed in an instant and landed on the window. It closed its wings and silently looked at Wang Lin. Wang Lin looked at it for a long time. Wang Lin murmured, "Is it you talking to me?" Karma, what is it? Confusion appeared in Wang Lin's eyes. The bird looked profoundly at Wang Lin before it flew off the window. It circled a few times in the sky before letting out a cry and disappearing into the dark clouds. Although it had left, the thunder in the sky continued to rumble. As the rumbles became even more intense, they seemed to disturb Wang Lin's thoughts. He subconsciously frowned and pointed outside with this finger. With this, there was flash of thunder in his right eye. As the mark flashed, the thunder in the sky stopped. It was as if there was a will beyond the thunder that caused it to retreat. It was as if this will was the king of thunder and could control endless thunder. If it wanted the thunder to retreat, the thunder had to retreat. Even the endless lightning seemed to have extinguished with this point of his finger. Even wind collapsed before this finger and was pushed back. Along with it went the rain. The rain seemed to have a spirit, and it was terrified. In the blink of an eye, the rain stopped. What stopped was only the rain above the city. Under the pressure the will that was like the king of thunder, all the rain in the country of Zhao seemed to stop. The thunder collapsed, the lightning shattered, and the dark clouds dissipated. There were cultivators flying in the sky of Zhao, including Wang Zhuo, Xu Fei, Zhou Rui, and company. They had been flying in the rain, but they were all shocked and terrified at this moment. Before him was an old man. The old man looked back, and endless shock filled his eyes. This aura, my God, what kind of cultivation level is this? In the other side of Zhao, two rays of light appeared when the dark clouds collapsed, revealing a man and a woman. The woman was Lu Mei. Her face was pale and she looked back with confusion in her eyes. The expression of the man next to her changed greatly and he almost exclaimed out loud. Also in the country of Zhao, in the city of Tang, the Tang family nascent soul old monster Tang Huiyuan was cultivating. At this moment, he opened his eyes upon feeling something frightening. At the peak of the Heng Yue sect, there was an old man in a yellow robe looking at the sky and frowning. He was Huang Long, but at this moment his expression was very serious. His hand continued to form seals until it trembled and blood flowed out from his nails. His eyes revealed a strange color, as if he didn't dare to believe it. How is this possible? In a place far away on planet Suzaku, there was a strong sect. This sect was strong enough to sweep across all rank countries. This sect was filled with souls, and the howling of ghosts echoed. From a distance, it looked like a giant flag. There was a person sitting in the sky filled with souls. He was a middle-aged man, and he was Dun Tian's senior brother. I can find it this old man has divinated 37 times and hasn't succeeded once. Could it be that my soul-refining sect really has no hope left? Thank you all for the support, especially for the large golden gifts from Leo. Leo is so touched he could cry. By the end of this month, Leo's video is facing a challenge in the popular rankings, hoping to get more likes for the video. Could it be that my soul-refining sect has no chance of rising again? No chance of continuing on? The middle-aged man seemed to go crazy and began to laugh. However, just at this moment, his expression changed, and he looked into the distance. Hey! His eyes narrowed, and his hands formed a seal. He began divinating like crazy. The man's expression changed rapidly. He consumed large amounts of life force and divinated 9 times, but the result of all 9 times were the same. This was an unbelievable and even absurd result to him. While pondering, his body flickered, and he disappeared without a trace. He used teleportation and charged toward the country of Zhao. In a city inside Zhao, the world had become peaceful. In the second floor of an inn, Wang Lin stood before the window and his murmurs echoed. Karma, what is karma? The night slowly passed. Wang Lin unknowingly returned to the table and stared at the extinguished candlestick in a daze. That voice continued to echo in his mind until it replaced everything. He had forgotten to close the window. There was no wind or rain anymore. The sun rose into the sky, and light shined on the earth. The people that got up were surprised to find that the dark clouds that had shrouded them for over half a month had all disappeared. The bright sky had no cloud as far as the eye could see. The sunlight gently shined on their bodies and gave people vitality once more. It seemed the summer had come a bit early this year. It seemed the rainy season had left a bit early this year. Big Fortune also awakened. He rubbed his eyes and looked at the sky outside the window. He immediately smiled, pointed out the window proudly, and began to roar. I had a dream last night. With a point of my finger, the thunder stopped. Ha, look how powerful I am. It seems I am indeed not ordinary. It is a pity. Wang Lin's thoughts became hidden in his mind when the sun appeared. He hadn't slept all night, but he didn't feel tired. However, a swelling pain came from between his eyebrows. He rubbed his brow and looked at Big Fortune. After seeing the smile on Big Fortune, he felt happy as well. You powerful. It was your dream that caused the thunderstorm to disappear, okay? Big Fortune became excited and felt even more proud. Time quickly passed. The county imperial exam would be held in 5 days. All the scholars that had come to take the exam waited for these 5 days to pass. On the morning of the 6th day, the sky was still sunny, and all the scholars rushed out from the various inns toward the different exam grounds. During these 5 days, Wang Lin had gone to the office to submit his entry and find his exam location. Other than that, he didn't leave his inn at all. He spent all his time reading. He was very nervous because if he passed he could continue, but if he failed he would have to start from the beginning. He would have to return to the village and silently wait for a few years before another test began. Wang Lin didn't want to fail. He couldn't bear to see his parents' disheartened expressions. He didn't want his failure to cause his relatives to give his parents those fake comforting gazes that were in actually mocking them. Big Fortune was suffocated during these 5 days. He was very active and had gone out by himself while Wang Lin was studying. He wandered the city and gradually met some people. He managed to learn to be even more stingy. On the 6th day, Wang Lin bathed and burned some incense. He then changed into a white scholar robe and let out a sigh of relief. He put on the bamboo backpack and walked toward the exam ground. He was going to the 3rd exam ground that was on the west side of the city. The street was very lively, and stalls filled both sides of the road. The stalls had been set out early so the students taking the exam could buy food. At a glance, there were many scholars rushing toward the exam locations. They were in a rush, worried, or very nervous. Even when eating, they would often devour the food in a few bites and quickly leave. Wang Lin took a few deep breaths and slowly calmed himself. After eating a few buns, he arrived outside the exam area with Big Fortune. There were many people here, but there was no noise. Most people had their eyes closed, recalling what they had read. 2 officials wearing robes coldly looked at the scholars. Because of them, there was a dignified atmosphere here. Wang Lin calmly stood there as he looked at the exam area, and he gradually calmed down. Big Fortune looked around a lot, but the more he looked, the more gloomy he became. He saw that the other book boys were all a lot younger than him. In comparison, he was out of place. After muttering a few words, Big Fortune took out some buns and took some big bites. Shortly after, the exam arrived. A bell chime seemed to come from the distance and echoed across the entire city. It was a heavy sound. The moment the bell rang, all the scholars opened their eyes and their expressions turned serious. The tension instantly reappeared. One of the officials rolled his eyes and slowly said, "Enter the exam room. If anyone has notes, get rid of them yourself. Don't be found later and get disqualified." After the scholar entered the exam room, everyone was searched. After making sure there were no notes, they were allowed in. When it was Wang Lin's turn, it was the same. After examining his bamboo backpack, they allowed him to enter. Big Fortune waved his hands at Wang Lin and began to roar. Even though the surrounding people frowned at him and looked at him with disdain, he didn't care. Wang Lin smiled and waved at Big Fortune outside before heading in. After finding the seat with his name, Wang Lin calmly sat down and paid attention to the inspector of the exam. Once all the scholars sat down, they turned over their exams and became focused. Only when the inspector took out the sealed exam paper did the sounds of writing start to echo across the room. Wang Lin calmly grinded ink and looked at the blank paper before him. He didn't write for a long time. The exam would last for a whole day, giving people plenty of time to think. The people that were meditating like Wang Lin had collected their thoughts and began to write. Soon, Wang Lin was the only one who was still pondering. The subject of this test was a painting. The painting was very simple. There was a mountain with a single tree on top. There seemed to be wind causing the tree to shake. There were a few sketches under the mountain. It seemed like there was a family guarding the mountain. The intent of this painting was very clear. It basically meant that ability was the pillar. All the other scholars knew this, and the essays they wrote all revolved around this. However, when Wang Lin saw the painting, the voice from 5 days ago appeared once more. Karma. What is it, karma? Time slowly passed. In the blink of an eye, it was noon. Some people were already finished writing. They held up their papers and blew on them to dry the rest of the ink. Their faces were filled with joy as they shook their heads and began to meditate. Only Wang Lin was still silently sitting there with confusion in his eyes and still hadn't written anything. This kind of thing was rare, and the inspectors couldn't help but pay more attention to Wang Lin. People gradually began to leave the exam ground. Some were proud, and some looked crestfallen. They either left alone or with their book boys. The sun began to set and the exam room became dark. There wasn't much time left, only half an hour. The last scholar aside from Wang Lin got up with a sigh. He looked at Wang Lin and shook his head before leaving. If you can do it, then leave quickly. Don't waste our time. An inspector frowned as he walked next to Wang Lin and knocked on the table. Wang Lin didn't look up but closed his eyes. A few moments later, he opened his eyes and added some water to his ink. His eyes shined brightly, and he began to quickly write on the paper. What is karma? I seek a wooden house, but this mountain has no wood, so I plant this lone tree. During sunrise, I harvest the branches. During midday, I harvest the wood. And during sunset, I harvest the roots. Wang Lin seemed to have forgotten what was going on in his surroundings, as the ancient voice echoed around him. The painting filled his mind as he wrote down his thoughts and questions. Eh? The inspector standing beside Wang Lin looked at this paper and was startled before taking a closer look. Soon, more inspectors were attracted and came to look. Some scoffed at a glance and left. Soon, the remaining inspectors all shook their heads and walked away. What is karma? Planting the tree is karmic cause and harvesting the wood is karmic effect. The day the house took form, it also became a karmic cycle. Wang Lin put down his pen and looked at it deeply. The brightness in his eyes dissipated and was replaced with confusion. He sighed as he clasped his hands at the last elderly inspector. He then cleaned up his stuff and left the exam area. After he left, the old inspector picked up Wang Lin's paper and carefully read it again. He seemed to enter a trance and gain some enlightenment. He remembered Wang Lin's name on the paper. This kind of insight into karma can come from a teenager. This person might not become a pillar of the courts, but he will become great scholar. The old inspector pondered for a long time before circling Wang Lin's name. Wang Lin walked out of the exam area. He spotted Big Fortune, who had been waiting all day and had fallen asleep leaning against a tree. He smiled and was about to wake him up when the world suddenly darkened. There seemed to be a ghostly howl, and the darkness shrouded Wang Lin and Big Fortune. It seemed to separate them from the rest of the city. A middle-aged man wearing a black robe walked out of the black wind. A cold aura filled his body as he looked at Wang Lin. This old man, one tea hurt you. You only have to answer one question. He was the soul refining sect Estun Tian's senior brother. Almost all the scholars in this country had been found by him, and he had asked them the same question. Then he erased their memories in disappointment and searched for the next person. As time goes on, a heavy dizziness is setting in. My mind can't cope. Tomorrow I will continue to burst forth with all my might. In 12 hours that will be doubling the likes for the video, hoping that everyone is ready with 2 likes for Leo. Thank you. Back when Wang Lin unconsciously blasted away the storm, Dun Tian's senior brother felt something. He then spent a large amount of life force to divinate 9 times. He was going to find the future of the soul refining sect. He was going to find the soul refining sect a path to survival. The 9 divinations all gave him an extremely absurd conclusion. He didn't believe it at first, but after coming to the same result 9 times, he had to believe it. All the divinations pointed to the country of Zhao. They pointed toward a specific country and a scholar inside that county. As a result, he came with his expectations high along with a feeling of absurdity. After arriving in this country, he spent a few days questioning almost every single scholar, but he didn't get a satisfactory answer. Those scholars were only mortals. How could they answer this question? With the middle-aged man's cultivation level, forget the country of Zhao, he was considered extremely powerful across the entire planet. Soul transformation, just one step from ascendant. The middle-aged man rolled up his sleeves, and the black wind roared. Endless ghosts roared inside, surrounding Wang Lin and Big Fortune. This caused this area to separate from the world and become blurry. Big Fortune was still sleeping. His snores echoed and seemed to be out of place. Wang Lin turned around and looked at the man that had walked out from the dark world. This person was an immortal. Wang Lin understood this, but he wasn't afraid at all. He could see that while the middle-aged man seemed powerful, he was in fact extremely weak. Wang Lin didn't understand why. It seemed that ever since that voice had appeared in his mind during that rainy night, a strange change had happened to his body. This change was an inexplicable feeling, and it became even more apparent just after he finished writing the answer to the test. He calmly looked at the middle-aged man that walked over and slowly said, "Speak." The middle-aged man was surprised. He stood several feet from Wang Lin and carefully looked at Wang Lin. In his eyes, Wang Lin was very ordinary, a true mortal and not a cultivator. However, Wang Lin's calm expression allowed the middle-aged man to see something extraordinary. All the scholars he had encountered had crumbled before him. The fear and terror they felt required him to use a spell to soothe them before they could speak. Wang Lin was the first person he had met that was so calm. This couldn't even be described as calm. From what the middle-aged man saw, Wang Lin seemed to not care about his presence at all. It was as if Wang Lin didn't think of him as an immortal, but as a mortal. It has to be said that with his cultivation level, even mortal emperors would have to tremble in fear and treat him like an ancestor. The invisible pressure around him wasn't something a mortal could resist. Even cultivators would be suppressed with fear. This middle-aged man had only encountered something like this twice in his life. Both of the mortals that he met that were this calm were the greatest scholars on planet Suzaku. These great scholars had comprehended the heavens and could see through the world. They had powerful auras and were not afraid of ghosts or the supernatural. Although even a QI condensation cultivator could kill them, the higher one's cultivation level, the more they would feel an aura similar to that of a cultivator within the scholars. If someone like this were to cultivate, they would be a natural. Wang Lin was the third person that gave him this feeling. After pondering for a bit, the middle-aged man clasped his hands at Wang Lin. This old man is Soul Refining Sect's sect master, Nian Tian. One line to read the heavens. The word Nian covers everything. Good name! Wang Lin smiled and clasped his hands at the middle-aged man. The aura of a great scholar became even stronger on his body. The howling ghosts slowly retreated as if they were afraid to get close. Even the howling weakened until it disappeared completely. This shocked the middle-aged man. He took a deep breath and hope appeared in his eyes. He faintly felt that he would find his answer from his person. It was likely that his 9 divinations all pointed to this person. This old man wants to ask if my soul refining sect has a path to survival. I hope you can resolve this old man's 100-year question. Nian Tian looked sincere and clasped his hands at Wang Lin again. The inheritance of his sect was very important, and asking a mortal was very strange. Even Nian Tian himself thought it was absurd, but with 9 divinations coming to the same result, he had to believe it. Luckily, Wang Lin's extraordinary calmness allowed him to see hope as he waited for Wang Lin's answer. After hearing this question, Wang Lin was startled and silently pondered. I can answer it. After a long time, Wang Lin shook his head. He had no idea what the soul refining sect was. He could only roughly guess that it was an immortal sect. The middle-aged man didn't speak and revealed a bitter expression. He shook his head and let out a sigh. He looked at the sky and felt that his behavior was really unreasonable. He was asking this mortal about the fate of his sect. This old man has disturbed you. You are a great scholar, so this old man wants to erase your memory. Ah, the old man revealed a wry smile. He waved his sleeves and turned to leave. His figure gave off a sense of depression and confusion as he walked away. Wang Lin looked at the bleak figure. He could faintly feel an invisible mountain weighing on this person. Under the weight of the mountain, this middle-aged man looked even more miserable. Wang Lin thought about his dreams. He remembered the voice that echoed in his mind and calmly said, "Take me to see the soul-refining sect." The middle-aged man that was about to leave stopped and turned to look at Wang Lin. After a long time he nodded and pointed at Wang Lin. The black wind gathered from all directions around Wang Lin. Then the middle-aged man stepped into the sky and disappeared along with Wang Lin. In the county, no one noticed the spell that was used outside the test area. No mortal could even see the black wind that had appeared. Under the tree, Big Fortune was still snoring. He muttered a bit before continuing his sleep. Planet Suzaku, in the sky above the soul-refining sect, Wang Lin appeared with a pale expression, but he was extremely calm. The black wind surrounded him and allowed him to stand firm. Beside him was Nian Tian. This is my soul-refining sect. Nian Tian pointed at the land below and a rumble echoed. The black fog covering the sect scattered, and the entire soul-refining sect entered Wang Lin's eyes. Wang Lin looked at the soul-refining sect beside him, and a familiar feeling appeared from the bottom of his heart. He felt like he had been here before in his dreams, but when he thought about it carefully, he couldn't think of anything. A moment later, Wang Lin softly said, "I want to go walk around." Good. Nian Tian didn't hesitate. He controlled the wind for Wang Lin, leading him to the soul-refining sect. There were many cultivators in the sect, and the opening of the sect attracted their attention. When they walked out, they immediately saw Wang Lin and Nian Tian. "Greetings, sect master." Voices echoed. The cultivators of the soul-refining sect all had strange expressions. They could all see that Wang Lin was immortal, but they didn't know why the sect master would bring Wang Lin here. Wang Lin's eyes were filled with confusion as he walked through the soul-refining sect. He felt that this place was very familiar, and he even knew ahead of time the dangers that were here. The more he walked, the stronger this feeling became. Under a mountain peak, Wang Lin stopped. There were many caves in this mountain, and they could be seen from below. The familiar feeling became even stronger. It was as if he had lived here at some unknown time. Nian Tian still followed Wang Lin and accompanied him as he walked through the soul-refining sect. His eyes revealed a mysterious light as he looked at Wang Lin. Most of the day slowly passed, and Wang Lin finally arrived next to the main mountain in the soul-refining sect. Looking at the main mountain, it was surrounded by black fog rings that led into the sky. It was a majestic sight. At this moment, the sky dimmed. Wang Lin looked at the main peak. Although the familiar feeling was there, it was missing something. After a long time, he shook his head and was about to speak. A roar came from the main mountain and a figure appeared in the fog at the peak. It stepped toward Wang Lin and Nian Tian. "Senior brother, this person is?" As the ancient voice echoed, the black shadow closed in. He was also a middle-aged man, and his gaze swept across Wang Lin. "Dun Tian, this person is a scholar that I invited here. You are in the middle of fusing with the flag. Don't be distracted. Quickly go back into closed-door cultivation." There was a complex emotion in Nian Tian's eyes as he spoke. Dun Tian smiled. Wang Lin was only a mortal in his eyes. Although he had taken a glance, he didn't bother remembering Wang Lin. He turned around and disappeared. Although he was like this, when Wang Lin saw Dun Tian, his mind rumbled as if he had thought of something. Looking at Dun Tian's retreating figure, 2 lines of tears started flowing down from the corners of his eyes for some reason. Just at this moment, a white bird flew across the soul-refining sect. It passed by while letting out a series of cries. "Hundreds of years from now, on the day you die, a man will come here. He will be the path to survival for your soul-refining sect." Wang Lin murmured as he looked at Dun Tian's back, and even more tears appeared. Nian Tian trembled. He looked at Wang Lin for a long time and clasped his hands. He didn't believe this completely, but he remembered it in his heart. He didn't tell Dun Tian this. It wouldn't until hundreds of years from now, when he was dying, that the words of that unforgettable scholar would appear in his mind. 1. Mean like read or study. The second watch has come. So thankful for the praise from the new clan leader. Last night Leo started from the starting point, immediately saw a new follower. I'm ecstatic. Thank you, everyone. On his deathbed, he recalled the words of the Nanom scholar form hundreds of years ago. Those words seemed to fill his mind until the moment his life ended, and he became one of the primary souls of the soul flag. His divine sense spread out for the last time at the end of his life, and spread across the soul-refining sect. He saw a man who had fled from a faraway place, and mixed in among the soul-refining sect disciples. A very ordinary-looking person. When he saw that moment, Nian Tian's divine sense trembled like never before. He was shocked to find that this person was the scholar he had questioned hundreds of years ago. With confusion and an unimaginable speculation, his divine sense dissipated. His soul became part of the soul flag. Wang Lin was sent back to the city in Zhao and stood next to the tree outside the test area. Big Fortune was still sleeping there. Everything that had happened felt like a dream. "Karma, I understand." A little Wang Lin looked at the sky and saw the white bird again. The white bird circled in the sky before slowly disappearing into the clouds. After waking up Big Fortune, the two returned to the inn. The moonlight fell from the sky and stretched out their shadows. The ranking was going to be placed a few days after the test. All the scholars anxiously waited for that day to come. Those who entered the ranking would have a chance of going to the next test. This chance was to go to the city of Su to participate in the exam there and have a chance to fly to the heavens. Once they obtained the title of Chosen Su, they would have a chance to go to the capital of Zhao for their last struggle. If they were talented enough to obtain the appreciation of head scholar Su, they would instantly become famous. If they could become Su Dao's disciple, the glory they could obtain would be unimaginable. This was the desire of almost all the scholars in Zhao. Less than 50 people in the entire county would have the chance to go to the city of Su. Although Wang Lin's name was not on the top of the list, he was among these 50 people. When Wang Lin saw his own name, he didn't feel excited. He calmly looked at the ranking and left with the excited and proud Big Fortune. He went to the city hall to confirm his identity and obtain the certification for the next exam and the silver reward issued by the imperial court. What caused Big Fortune to become excited was not that Wang Lin had gotten on the ranking but the silver. His experiences during this short month had unknowingly changed Wang Lin, or one could say that he should have always been like this. Those dreams still existed every night, and he had grown used to them. His mentality had changed. He no longer felt lost. He no longer felt confused or worried about the failing the exam. What would be obtained would still be obtained, and what would be lost would still be lost. Nothing was worth anything. Only the heart remained the same. The heart was as calm as the water in the well. It was like looking at a mountain as a mountain, then seeing a mountain not as a mountain, and then seeing a mountain as a mountain again. In this short period of time, not even he realized how much he had changed. The aura of a great scholar gradually grew on his body. Among the countless scholars, his straight back and calm eyes stood out like a pearl, like cultivators that coldly look down at their fellow cultivators. Life is like a dream. I am not willing to wake up from this dream. There were many scholars celebrating and even more feeling depressed when Wang Lin left the city with Big Fortune. Just like how he came, he calmly left. Big Fortune followed Wang Lin and continued to calculate their silver. He would sometimes mutter and reveal an expression of heartache. At the gate of the city, Wang Lin stopped, and his gaze fell on a wine stand not far away. Big Fortune, go buy wine. He suddenly wanted to drink even though he had gotten seriously drunk after just 2 cups before. There is very little silver and you want to drink wine? Big Fortune rolled his eyes as he grabbed the cloth around his chest and shook his head. What does this silver count as? Thousands of gold coins can be scattered, and they will always come back. Quickly, go buy wine. Wang Lin smiled and pushed Big Fortune. Big Fortune struggled and let out a long sigh. He arrived next to the wine stand unwillingly and began to bargain in a way that made Wang Lin gobsmacked. He even played dirty, and in the end the liquor vendor smiled wryly and sold Big Fortune 2 jugs of wine at a very low price. Despite this, Big Fortune still felt so much heartache when he took out the silver that his face became twisted and he started to mutter. Mine, it was mine. Wang Lin laughed and took the wine jug. He took a big gulp and allowed the wine to flow down the corner of his mouth. Big Fortune quickly followed with a bitter expression. At this moment it was noon. The two walked further and further away. The lonely and sad aura around Wang Lin dissipated greatly. Instead, it was replaced with relief. Young lord, where are we going? Big Fortune's voice echoed from the distance. The city of Su. I heard the osmanthus wine there is pretty god. I need to wait for a person there. Wang Lin took another sip of wine. He untied his hair and let it scatter behind him as he laughed. The city of Su was 250 kilometers south of the capital of Zhao. This city was very long and had a few rivers going through it. The city of Su was a river city. The city of Su was famous because of Su Dao. The city of Su was also a gathering place of talents, and where there were talents, there would be no lack of beauties. There were always boats traversing these rivers. Dancing and singing would happen day and night, making it very lively. Poetry, beautiful dances, and zither music filled the entire city of Su. All the wine stalls that sold osmanthus wine were as famous as the scholars. It was said that the officials in the capital would send people to buy the osmanthus wine from the city of Su. The head scholar, Su Dao, loved this wine in his earlier years and often drank it while comprehending the world. When he became famous, the osmanthus wine became even more famous. The 2-month journey passed by in the blink of an eye. Wang Lin and Big Fortune were sitting inside a humble carriage on the way to the city of Su. Wang Lin drank wine he had bought along the way and looked outside. Sometimes his laughter after getting drunk would echo. Young lord, don't drink anymore. The amount of wine you drink is frightening. It's only been 2 months. 2 months. See how much wine you already drank. Almost all the silver has been used by your drinking. Big Fortune cried out, voicing his extreme heartache. If you keep drinking, even if we reach the city of Su, we won't have any silver to stay at an inn. Who told you to drink? Who told you to drink so much? Big Fortune's chatter became more and more frequent in these 2 months. However, not only did he not make Wang Lin feel annoyed, but Wang Lin felt a sense of familiarity with him. No harm, you are the bookboy and housekeeper. If there is no more silver left, you can just go earn some. Wang Lin laughed as he joked with Big Fortune. He drank wine and looked at Big Fortune, who had a bitter expression. As Big Fortune continued to chatter, Dusk arrived and the sunset gave off a red glow. It wasn't too glaring and the light was extremely gentle. As the carriage wobbled, they closed in on the city of Su. The city of Su was very big and looked like a mighty city. However, this was only the outer appearance. Inside it was filled with winding rivers and gave off a feeling of elegance. After paying the fare for the carriage, Big Fortune looked at the little remaining money in his hand and nearly cried. Most of the money they had spent on the road was for wine that entered Wang Lin's stomach. Wang Lin's tolerance for alcohol had unknowingly increased. He was no longer someone who would get drunk after just 2 cups. After getting off the carriage, Wang Lin fixed his clothes. He looked very elegant with his white robe and long hair scattered. As he held the wine jug in his hand, the scholarly aura around him had dissipated. It was replaced with a sense of freedom. As he walked on the streets of Su, he saw many people walking along the road. Students accounted for more than half, and there were also many beautiful women embellishing the city. Although Wang Lin's appearance was ordinary, his temperament was very special. As he walked down the street, he attracted a lot of attention. Many beautiful women directed their gazes at Wang Lin. Wang Lin remained calm and continued to walk forward. Big Fortune followed behind him. During these past 2 months, he constantly had a bitter expression. At this moment, he was the same and continued to sigh. It was dusk in the city of Su, and the moonlight gradually appeared. As the boats floated along the river, the sound of music and leisure could be heard. Wang Lin stood on a bridge and looked at the boats on the river as the zither music filled his ears. "Young lord, who are we waiting for?" Big Fortune peeked at a few of the women dancing on a boat. He swallowed, and his eyes shined. Wang Lin remained calm and muttered, "Waiting for a person from my dream. He will come and give me a pot of wine. If he shows up, it will confirm one of my guesses." Big Fortune looked at the empty wine jug in Wang Lin's hand and said very carefully, "We are going to stand here waiting. Maybe we should find a cheap inn first." He was afraid Wang Lin would make him buy wine again. Wang Lin shook his head and revealed a smile that wasn't Tia's smile. He looked at Big Fortune and said leisurely, "I remember that there was a lot of silver, especially after we got the silver from the exam." "Is there?" Forgot. Big Fortune blinked and revealed an awkward expression. "Take out the silver you hid and get some osmanthus wine and rent a boat. We will live here for a few days." Wang Lin waved his sleeve with a smile and no longer looked at Big Fortune. Wind blew by, causing ripples to echo across the river's surface and landed on Wang Lin's body. This wind was soft and not cold. It carried a hint of warmth. Along with the wind came the sound of a zither playing. Wang Lin murmured, "Will you come?" The new chapter is late, but it has over 500 more words than the previous ones. I hope not to be hit. Wishing for the like button for the video. The world is an inn for all living things. Time is a guest of the ages. The difference between life and death is like being awakened from a dream. The city of Su left the season of recovery in June and entered the season when the flowers bloomed. The willow leaves that flew through the sky seemed to want to carry the passage of time with them. The willow leaves filled the sky like snow. It was a very beautiful scene. They looked like snow in the summer as they drifted across the sky. If the wind was even stronger, they would flutter more and look like they didn't have roots. While beautiful, they would also give off a hint of sadness. They seemed like wanderers that had no home. They could only move with the wind, not knowing where they would go. Perhaps they would land in the river and become part of the water, or fall on the ground and mix with the dust. They would then be swept away by the powerful wind. Their fate was the wind, and different winds gave them different lives. There was one wisp of willow that was white and covered in flowers gently fluttering in the air. It landed in the palm of a young man in white, who was on a small boat. The young man was holding a wine jug in his left hand and drank a mouthful of wine as he recited a haughty poem. His voice wasn't too loud, but it gave off a leisurely feeling, like he was going to pursue the end of the world. Behind the young man was a middle-aged man wearing the clothes of a book boy. He had a bitter expression, and every time the young man took a sip, the middle-aged man's heart would ache a bit more. One jug of osmanthus wine cost 7 silver pieces. Expensive, really too expensive. Drinking a mouthful is almost like swallowing half a piece of silver. The willow leaf that landed in the young man's hand stopped for a moment, but didn't seem to reach its endpoint. It seemed to release a faint sigh as it flew off from the young man's hand. It fluttered into the distance with a hint of madness, as if it knew where it was destined to go and charged tirelessly toward its goal. There was a forest of peach blossoms on the riverbank. As the willow leaves fluttered away, peach blossoms fell into the river, causing ripples to echo. The crazed willows dance with the wind. The light peach blossoms flow with the river. Wang Lin drank the wine in his hand and his laughter echoed. Aside from the boatman and these two people, there were 3 beautiful women on the boat as well. One was playing the zither and 2 were singing and dancing. The boat floated along the river, through the stone bridge, and leisurely into the distance. Big Fortune, bring out the wine. Wang Lin turned around and looked at the middle-aged man as he laughed. Big Fortune had a bitter expression and continued to sigh. He picked up a jug of wine and unwillingly handed it to Wang Lin. He began speaking as if he was about to cry. Young lord, there really isn't too much silver left. We are renting this boat but also buying wine. These 3 little girls accompanying us cost a lot too. The daily cost is simply too high. How about we go ashore and find a cheap inn to save some money? What's the rush? The person I am waiting for hasn't tea arrived. Wang Lin shook his head and smiled. He took the jug and drank as he sat down. He listened to the beautiful woman playing the strings on the zither. The sound of the zither was gentle and cheerful, but it couldn't enter Wang Lin's mind. Young lord, I have taken out all the silver I hid. You damn it, this old man counted. If we continue spending like this, we are going to end up as beggars in 7 days. It has been more than 1 month. 1 month. Who the hell are you waiting for, and why haven't they come? Big Fortune's heart ached as he bitterly complained to Wang Lin. As if he looked very funny, the woman that was taking a break from dancing laughed. Big Fortune's eyes widened, and he stared at the woman. After muttering a bit, he picked up a jug of wine himself and took a big gulp. I need to drink more. This is good wine. 1 mouthful is half a silver. The zither music is still not right. Wang Lin leaned against the side of the boat and gently shook his head. After a long time, he seemed to have drunk too much. He got up and walked next to the woman playing the zither. He placed his hand on the zither, and the beautiful woman's face turned red as she withdrew her hands. I remember a song. I don't know the name, but I heard it in my dream. It should be placed like this, Wang Lin said as he closed his eyes, and his hand began playing the zither. At first it was very raw and the broken sound was not a song. However, as Wang Lin focused on playing, the song gradually became coherent. An unspeakable sadness came from the zither music and flew out in all directions. The 2 women resting on the boat went into a daze and looked at Wang Lin. The sorrow in the music was very light, but it could reach one's soul. When you heard it, you couldn't help but be startled. It was unknown how long ago Wang Lin had sat down before the zither and started to play. The woman that was playing the zither sat beside him. There was an unspeaking splendor shining in her beautiful eyes as she seemed to be lost in the zither music. Even Big Fortune was startled as he sat there. He drank mouthfuls of wine one after another. He forgot his heartache and began to stare at his right wrist. Lima Wan had played this zither song, and a different song that contained the same charm came from the blind woman in the demon spirit land. At this moment, tears slowly flowed from Wang Lin's closed eyes. His tears landed on the zither. They seemed to fuse with the song and scattered with the music. He would have the dream every night. He saw a lot, but not everyone was clear. There were a few people that were still blurry. Although they were vague figures, that feeling of sorrow is very strong. Under the zither music, the boat drifted across the river and passed through many bridges until dusk arrived. Wang Lin waited for more than 1 month, but the person from his dream that should be appeared still hadn't shown up. As the boat floated under a stone bridge, 2 figures unknowingly appeared on the stone bridge and listened to the sad zither music. These 2 people were old men with white hair. One of them wore a green robe. Although he was just standing there, he stood straight like a pine tree. His expression gave off a sense of age, and his eyes revealed wisdom. Even just standing there, he gave off the aura of a grand scholar. He was Su Dao. Su Dao revealed an emotional gaze as he looked at the boat floating away. He saw Wang Lin playing the zither and leisurely said, "What a sad song. Such a song is not something an ordinary person can play. The sorrow reveals sadness that could only appear after one has experienced countless years." The image of that sad figure still lingers in his heart. Susan, this old man didn't make this trip in vain. The old man behind Su Dao also let out a sigh. If Wang Lin saw this person, he would recognize him as the old man who watched him write his exam until the end. Student didn't he expect him to be able to play the zither. When I saw his exam paper, I felt that this child was not ordinary. When I came to meet you, I saw this child on the boat, so I thought I would bring you here to see him, sir. The old man respectfully bowed. The boat went further away and the zither music gradually disappeared. At this moment, Su Dao smiled. He took a few steps down the bridge and shouted at the boat below. Young man, tell this old man what you think karma is. Wang Lin's hands stopped, and the zither music stopped. He opened his eyes and looked back with confusion. From his position, he could only see the old man, and not the second old man on the other side of the bridge. At this moment, night arrived and the bright moon hung in the sky. In the night, the figure of the old man was a bit blurry, and even the bridge seemed to be hidden under the moonlight. Even Wang Lin's gaze seemed to become blurry. He looked at the old man, at the bridge, and the surrounding haziness as he began to mutter karma. It shouldn't be like this. If this was time reversing, if this was a reincarnation, if this was a dream, then I should have met the me in my dream. But why did I meet this old man? Why is it like this? Wang Lin had waited for more than 1 month. He had waited for that scene that caused him to awaken in confusion and spend a day drinking wine. In that dream, he saw the other him in the dream appear on the bridge in the city of Su. However, instead of meeting his dream self, he met this old man. This can be explained. I know about the soul refining sect. I can even vaguely guess that the person that will appear in the soul refining sect hundreds of years from now is the dream me I have gained. Enlightenment in all of this. But didn't I see him here? Wang Lin's eyes were filled with confusion. He didn't understand. Even he himself became blurry. As Wang Lin remained in a state of confusion, the boat floated further and further away. When the old man saw that Wang Lin didn't answer, he smiled and shouted again. Young man, tell this old man what you think karma is. Karma. I am karmic cause. I am karmic effect. Wang Lin's voice slowly arrived and gradually disappeared with the boat. Su Dao smiled as he looked at the boat that disappeared. He turned back and looked at the student behind him. What is his name? The end of the year is here, brothers. Give a like for Leo. Susan quickly said, his name is Wang Lin. Give me his exam paper. There was a hint of joy in Su Dao's eyes. Susan smiled when he heard this. He then proceeded to take out the exam paper. He had come here just so he could let Su Dao see this extraordinary exam paper. However, after he came here, Su Dao wouldn't look at it until today. Holding Wang Lin's paper, Su Dao took a closer look and nodded. This young man will be the last student this old man will take. With a smile, Su Dao looked back at the boat. There was a willow leaf floating between him and the boat under the moonlight. It was impossible to know if Su Dao was looking at the willow or the boat. Time would fly by, and when you wanted to pursue it, there would be no trace of it. Several days later, Wang Lin left the boat with big fortune. He stood on the shore and looked at the boat he had lived on for more than a month and at the river where he waited for more than a month. He silently pondered for a very long time. It wasn't until half an hour later that Wang Lin shook his head and let out a sigh. He was about to turn and leave when a cry came from the sky. Wang Lin's body trembled and he looked up at the sky. He saw the familiar white bird circle in the sky. The bird gradually descended and landed on the bridge in the distance. It looked at Wang Lin before flying back into the clouds. Its white figure was like the willow flower. Wang Lin murmured, "Is it you?" Wang Lin didn't participate in the exam in the city of Su. The day he left the boat, he was invited to the house of the great scholar Su Dao. The person that invited him was the old man inspector. Su Dao's house wasn't large, but it was very elegant. It was quiet and gave one peace of mind. In the courtyard, Wang Lin saw the old man that had asked him the question on the bridge. Big Fortune had to wait outside in the courtyard while Wang Lin and Su Dao drank osmanthus wine as they began to chat in the courtyard. Only when the moon was high in the air did Wang Lin bow at Su Dao. This old man has had many disciples in my life, but I only have 3 true students. From now on, you will be my last student. This old man doesn't want you to take the imperial exam. And your personality is not suited for that. This old man wants you to become the country of Zhao's grand scholar once I die. Not only the country of Zhao, there are many countries on planet Suzaku. This old man wants you to become the grand scholar of the entire planet. This is a life without riches and glory or monstrous power, but you will be able to comprehend the world and have your own thoughts. In this world, since there are mortals like us, There are naturally immortals. Many immortals have come to me, asking me to walk the path of Tao, but they were all rejected by me. This old man smiles and looks at the sky. I have my own ideals. I pursue no Tao, but I comprehend the truth of the world. Although my body is fragile, my mind can live forever and break open the cage. Although these immortals can kill us mortals with just a finger, they still have to lower their noble heads before the world's grand scholar. Immortals cultivate to defy the heavens, but U.S. scholars comprehend the heavens. That is also defying the heavens. If the heavens have a spirit, then in its eyes, the immortals are just mortals like us. They are mortals, and we are mortals. The only difference is that they have the power to make the mountains crumble and we have an understanding of the heavens. In the end, it all intersects. This teacher has taken in many students that are cultivators who came to teacher in hopes of reaching the soul formation stage. Some pursued even deeper into the meaning of Tao. This kind of life is ordinary but not ordinary. Wang Lin, are you willing to choose this path? At this moment, although Su Dao was merely an ordinary old man under the moonlight, Wang Lin could feel a mighty aura from him. This aura came from comprehending the truth of the world and having one's own thoughts. It was this that allowed Su Dao to stand at the top. That will was like a flame that burned inside Su Dao, and it was heaven shaking. Scholar, Grand Scholar, and finally Lord Scholar. Su Dao had his hands behind his back as he looked at Wang Lin. Wang Lin silently pondered, and after a long time he knelt and bowed at Su Dao. At this moment, Wang Lin had just turned 19, and Su Dao was now 83. Su Dao smiled as he grabbed Wang Lin's hand and supported Wang Lin up from the ground. Their words echoed inside the courtyard. This old man entered the world as a boy and returned home middle-aged. I traveled all over Zhao and also went to many other countries. I saw mountains, I saw rivers, I saw life. At age 50, my wife died and this old man grieved before her grave. It was there that I gained enlightenment about the world. Every time I thought about life, I would remember the time that I knew her. After that, my thoughts turned to karma. What is this karma? Why does a karma cycle exist in this world? One night passed, and Wang Lin's life changed on this night. He no longer pursued the imperial exam but pondered his own life's desires. Aside from being filial to his parents, he wanted to understand the world and pursued that voice in his mind. What is karma? What is life and death? What is true and false? He and Big Fortune lived inside Su Dao's mansion and listened to Su Dao's teachings every day. The aura of a great scholar became stronger and stronger inside his body. Several dozen people received the title of Chosen Su and went to the imperial capital after the exam. Some rose and some fell, but none of this could move Wang Lin anymore. He hadn't entered the exam, but Wang Lin's reputation had soared in the country of Zhao, surpassing those that had soared into the imperial capital. Although he hadn't left the Su mansion, as time passed, people came to visit Su Dao, and Wang Lin was the one that came out to greet them. Wang Lin had seen a lot of people, whether it was mortal students, rich royalty, and even cultivators. He became even more calm, he started loving wine even more, and he became even more leisurely. In the blink of an eye, years passed. As the willow leaves fell, Wang Lin was about to become middle-aged. He stood in the courtyard where Su Dao had taken him as a student 10 years ago, watching the willow leaves cover the ground. Su Dao's body had become even older. Time had taken a lot from his body and left a lot on his body. He could no longer drink and talk all night with Wang Lin like 10 years ago. He sat in a chair with 2 servants helping him move. He watched the willow leaves fly with Wang Lin. Wang Lin's expression was calm. After sending the 2 servants away, he pushed Su Dao's chair. Liner, look at these willow leaves. They are here year after year. Even if teacher is gone, they will still come every season as if they have an agreement with heaven. Su Dao's voice was hoarse, but his spirit was very good. He lifted his right hand and one of the willow leaves fell in his palm. Wang Lin softly said, "This willow leaf is life." Su Dao looked at the willow leaf and slowly said, "Life isn't just a ball of karma. It floats before you, but if you try to seize it, you can catch it. Only when it's tired will it fall in your hand." As he spoke, a soft breeze came, causing the willow leaf in his palm to fly away. Karma, karma. Wang Lin, if you can find your own way among the countless willow leaves, then you will know what karma is. Su Dao smiled and pointed at the sky. That ball of willow leaves is teacher. Wang Lin looked up and looked at where Su Dao was pointing. However, there were many willow leaves in the sky, so he didn't know which one Su Dao was pointing toward. You can see it, because that willow leaf is my entire life. Su Dao closed his eyes and 2 streams of tears rolled down. It is 2 willow leaves. They were tangled together due to the wind. That's my life with her in Su Dao's eyes. All the willow leaves had disappeared, all of them beside the 2 that were sticking together. They flew further and further away. That year when the willow leaves flew through the sky, I saw you on the bridge. I saw the confusion in your eyes. I thought you were like a rootless willow leaf. You were very helpless and confused. It was as if there was a problem that you could understand. I saw you and saw the willow leaf that flew by. That was your life. It swirled before you, but you weren't able to see it, so it came before me. I saw the willow leaf, but you must have thought I was looking at you. I asked the willow leaf the question, but you must have thought I was asking you. At that time, I was thinking I should help you. Su Dao turned his head. His old face revealed a kind expression as he looked at Wang Lin. Wang Lin's body trembled. You are the last karma in my life. I've always felt like I've seen you somewhere else before. Su Dao turned around and looked at the sky. As years pass, people will see the willow leaves cover the city. They don't understand that the willow leaves come to find the person they are connected to. Each willow leaf represents the entire life of a person. However, in the end, they land in the water, they land in the dust, and dissipate before our eyes. It's just not that they can find us, but we aren't able to find the one that belongs to us. Wang Lin silently raised his head and looked at the flowing willow leaves in the sky, a scene that was just like 10 years ago. He eventually saw a group of willow leaves. There were 2 that seemed to be glued together. The willow leaves fluttered endlessly, and no matter how hard the wind blew, it wasn't able to separate them. Zither music seemed to come from somewhere, floating into his ears. It was as if a woman was waiting, and the only thing to accompanying her was the zither music. The last 2 days of the month are upon us, wishing for the like button for the video. Right now, it's about doubling the likes for the video. Very grateful and will return the favor. In a flash, another 10 years passed. Su Dao had died of old age 3 years ago. He left during the winter. He struggled to survive the winter so he could live for a few more months and see the willow leaves next year. However, although his mind could comprehend the world, his body wasn't able to alter life and death. During the winter, the snowflakes fell, leaving the world and the river frozen with a thick layer of ice. He looked at the snow falling as if it would last for an eternity. Wang Lin pushed his wooden chair and walked through the city of Su. Wang Lin, who was almost 40, gave off a steadfast aura. He wore a white shirt as he silently pushed Su Dao. This winter was particularly cold. The falling snow was blown by the cold wind and fell on their bodies. Early in the morning, the bell in the temple leisurely echoed in the distance. The crisp sound could cleanse one's heart. Lin, teacher is about to leave. Teacher never have any children. Your 3 senior brothers inherited a lot of truths from me, but only your thoughts are similar to mine. I know you have already become aware of karma. Although still hazy, you will eventually understand. What you pursue is not just karma. Teacher will gift this mansion to you. Su Duo's weak voice mixed with the wind and entered Wang Lin's ears. Wang Lin remained silent and sorrow appeared in his eyes. Su Dao had accompanied him for 17 years. During these 17 years, Wang Lin had gone from a 19-year-old young man to a middle-aged man. Following Su Dao, Wang Lin learned a lot and understood a lot. The snow was heavy and covered their vision. As the bell echoed, the snow covered the entire city of Su. The crunching sound of the wooden chair being pushed was weak. Only the 2 lines of tracks left by the chair were visible. It was like life, and when you looked back, you could see how long it was. However, it only led to the present, and you couldn't see where it ended. Snow fell and covered the tracks in the ground. Not even the starting point could be seen. Send me to the Su mountain outside the city. Su Dao's old voice was weak, but his eyes were bright. He looked at the world as if he was seeing his own end. Wang Lin silently nodded as he pushed the wooden chair and walked forward toward Su Dao's final goal. The snowfall became even heavier. The wind and snow fell on his face. He allowed the snow to melt, and the coldness entered his heart. Wang Lin pushed the wooden chair through the ancient streets and out of the city of Su. He saw the small mountain outside the city. The mountain wasn't large, but it had spirit. One couldn't see this spirit, but if one closed their eyes, they would feel every tree and grass on the mountain. One could feel the mountain breathing, and that was enough. Wang Lin pushed the chair up the path leading to the mountain. Su Dao slowly closed his eyes. He faintly felt like he couldn't hold on anymore. However, his eyes were still as bright as they were 17 years ago. The eye is the window to the heart. Su Dao's body may rot, but this thought's the trajectory of his life had already formed, so it would never disappear. Carry me to that place. Su Dao's voice was even weaker. Wang Lin carried Su Dao on his back and walked off the mountain road. The snow continued to fall as he walked into the mountain step by step. At the end there was a solitary grave. This grave existed in the snow as if it was waiting for something. It seemed to have waited for several decades for this day. Su Dao sat down before the grave and stared at it. There were no tears, but his gaze became gentle. I am coming, you said you wanted to always look at me, so I buried you here so you could always see me below the mountain, Su Dao murmured as he touched the grave. His expression was gentle, and he seemed to forget the coldness of the grave. Or it could be said that the coldness from the grave had turned to warmth in his heart. He slowly closed his eyes, and his face had a gentle smile as he lost his breath. Su Dao died. Wang Lin stood there for a long time. He turned around and looked down the mountain. From this position he could see the city of Su and the Su mansion. A powerful sense of melancholy filled Wang Lin's heart. He was confused. He was still thinking about what kind of existence this world was. Was it his previous life, his reincarnation, or just a dream? It was just that there was no way to explain everything. Truth and false seemed to traverse in a permanent circle, making it impossible to tell where the start and end were. Half a month later, another grave appeared next to the lone grave on the mountain. It was no longer lonely. 3 years after Su Dao died, Wang Lin was 39. His parents had been brought here from the mountain village many years ago, but they couldn't adjust to the life here. After several months, they returned to their hometown and lived an ordinary life. In the winter when Wang Lin was 39, he was looking at the snow when he got a summon from the Emperor of Zhao. This was the 5th summon in the 3 years after Su Dao died. The contents of the 5 summons were roughly the same, but each was more luxurious than the last. They said the emperor wanted Wang Lin to come to the capital to become the imperial teacher. During these 20 years, Wang Lin's name had risen among the scholars in Zhao. Although he had never left the city of Su in these 20 years, people would come to visit and listen to his teachings during the annual imperial exam. This was related to Su Dao, but it was also related to Wang Lin himself. During these 20 years, some dignitaries, some scholars, and some nobles had been defeated by Wang Lin's words. Everyone knew that Wang Lin had obtained Su Dao's inheritance to become a grand scholar. This became even more deeply rooted in their hearts when Su Dao died. However, nothing was absolute. There were a lot of people who didn't recognize Wang Lin's existence. They didn't believe Wang Lin was worthy of the title of grand scholar, and the Emperor of Zhao led that group. These opinions were scattered when Su Dao was alive. However, in the 3 years after Su Dao died, their voices became louder and louder. During Wang Lin's 3 years of silence, they had become voices of doubt. Wang Lin didn't pay attention to these kinds of things. He continued his quiet life with big fortune. Wang Lin's silence allowed the people that questioned him to become even more unbridled. They admitted Wang Lin was Su Dao's student, but they didn't think Wang Lin was worthy of the title of grand scholar. Driving by people with their own motives, this matter slowly changed until such voices could be heard all across Zhao. Wang Lin still ignored all of this. He watched the sunrises and sunsets. He looked at the spring pass and autumn arrive. He comprehended the world and tried to understand karma. He also searched for signs of life and death and true and false. Although he was in a state of confusion himself, he continued to experience life. He didn't want to pay attention to these pointless things, and he didn't feel the need to prove anything. All of this meant nothing to him. It was like children arguing. However, the more he remained silent, the louder those voices became. What was worse was that out of Su Dao's 3 other students, other than Susan, who was elderly and terminally ill, the other 2 had also stood out to question Wang Lin. As a result, the scholars of Zhao were a mess and even disrupted the ordinary people. The voices of doubt were like a storm that swept across Zhao. Some people had found Wang Lin's exam paper from 20 years ago and began to heavily criticize it. They used the fact that Wang Lin had only passed the first exam to throw out arrogant accusations. Amidst these messy voices, the summon from the imperial capital of Zhao came the 6th time, 7th time, 8th time, 9th time, following Wang Lin like snow. What was even more excessive was that this affected Wang Lin's parents. His parents were already old and should have been enjoying the end of their lives. However, for some reason, the people in the village had learned of this, and it spread across the village. The rumor of the villagers ignited Wang Lin's parents' anger. They were already old, and this anger caused Wang Lin's father to fall ill. During the winter of this year, Wang Lin stood in the yard, holding a letter. This letter was from his mother. She had found someone to write it and then entrusted his 4th uncle to send it. The letter told Wang Lin that his father was fine. After reading it again and again, a hint of anger appeared in Wang Lin's calm eyes. Wang Lin folded the letter and put it in his clothes. He looked up at the falling snow and slowly said, "A bit too much." He had no intention of proving anything. No matter how loud the voices in Zhao were, he didn't care. The title Grand Scholar held no value. He didn't care. He was like an old man who just wanted to slowly comprehend the world. However, everything had a limit, and Wang Lin's bottom line was his parents. The anger of his parents, the pain of his parents, the grief of his parents, and the wrath of his parents were his anger, his pain, his sadness, his wrath. Big fortune, make the necessary arrangements. I'll lecture for 10 years. For the next 10 years, I welcome anyone in the world to come to the city of Su to learn from me. If they can show they are above me, they can take this mansion from me. Wang Lin waved his sleeves and left. Behind him, Big Fortune, who had entered his elderly years, was still the same as 20 years ago. He was very excited as he was equally as angry during these last 3 years. Those people that used to respect him not only alienated him but were also cold to him. Now that he heard Wang Lin's words, there was a hint of expectation in his proud expression. He quickly went to arrange this matter. My young lord is still the most haughty. 10 years of lectures. I want to see the expressions of all those people when they fail. The end of the month is here. Wishing for the like button for the VIDEO. Brothers, do you still have likes for the VIDEO? 10 years of lecture to welcome the scholars of the world. This news spread out from the city of Su and spread through various channels. It quickly made its way throughout the country of Zhao. When the people that questioned Wang Lin heard this, they were all dumbfounded. Su Dao had once lectured, but it was only for 1 year. However, this Wang Lin dared to say 10 years. This kind of thing couldn't be considered haughty but extremely arrogant. The so-called lectures were like challenges in the martial arts world to welcome anyone to battle in these 10 years. This matter quickly spread. After a brief moment of calm, there was a violent reaction. Countless scholars and people that questioned Wang Lin with the secret support of the Zhao Emperor all headed for the city of Su, along with anyone who thought they were qualified. There were many people in an inn on the official road 500 kilometers away. There were many scholars there, and people were all talking about Wang Lin's lecture. Have you heard that Su Dao's student Wang Lin arrogantly announced a 10-year lecture? 10 years! The entire world is shocked. All the skeptics are heading there. Hey, almost everyone already knows this. I say this Wang Lin does have talent, but he is not qualified to be the Grand Scholar of Zhao. I don't think so. Since he dares to say 10 years, that means he has confidence to back it up. I heard several dozen scholars visited him a few days ago and all returned in failure. A soft snort came from a table near the window in the inn. There were 4 people sitting there, 3 young ones and 1 old man. The old man drank tea as he listened. He looked calm, but there was disdain hidden in his eyes. Someone who merely passed the first exam dares to lecture. Sir, shouldn't T have accepted him back then? The title of Grand Scholar should belong to me, Su Yi. Similar things happened all over the country of Zhao. The closer they were to the city of Su, the more common it became. Inside the city of Su, the door to the Su mansion was opened all day long. It wouldn't close for 10 years. Wang Lin calmly sat inside the courtyard and drank osmanthus wine as he coldly looked at the 100 scholars before him. It had been 4 months since he said he would lecture for 10 years. More than 1,000 people had come to the mansion. Today, another 100 people came, filling the courtyard. Some people were standing outside the door, and even further out were countless carriages with old men sitting inside. As time passed, even more scholars from all over Zhao rushed over to the city of Su. I am Dong Yun. I was in the same generation of examinee as Sir. I am now an official at the palace and have a question I'd like Sir's help on. A middle-aged man stood up from the ground. He gave off a proud aura as he stood straight. I don't understand what the meaning of the changes of the 4 seasons are. I hope Sir can tell me. The middle-aged man looked at Wang Lin and slightly clasped his hands. You were born in spring, grew up in summer, became old in autumn, and died in winter. You ask me about spring, summer, autumn, and winter, but in my eyes you are growing old and dying of illness. Wang Lin drank a mouthful of wine. The middle-aged man was startled by Wang Lin's response and asked in a daze, then why would one grow old and die of illness? Wang Lin leisurely said, because you still alive. The middle-aged man was startled on the spot for a long time, but there was still confusion in his eyes he didn't understand. The moment you die, you will think back about your life from birth to death. This process can escape the 4 seasons. Send off the guest. Wang Lin waved his sleeve and a servant arrived. The servant led the stunned middle-aged scholar that seemed to have understood something out. I want to ask Sir something. I am a scholar of great talent. When I meet people in my hometown, no one can beat me. But why have others succeed while I have nothing after 30 years? A fallen old man filled with confusion clasped his hands at Wang Lin. The country of Zhao has mountains that are high and low. The high mountains might not reach the peak, and the low mountains might contain a spirit vein. You only compare the height of the mountains. Why not see them as mountains instead? Send off the guest. The surrounding people went into an uproar. The countless scholars were shocked and began to ponder. A young man couldn't squeeze into the courtyard, so he shouted, I asked Sir, why is there rain in this world, and what is rain? Good question. Wang Lin stood up and walked up the ladder with a jug of wine in his hand until he reached the highest point. Looking at the people below, there was something unusual about him. There were many people here right now, and when he looked into the distance, he saw even more people rushing over. The entire city seemed to be moving. Almost all the scholars who had come to the city beside those that had already questioned him were here today. Wang Lin's gaze fell on a restaurant in the distance. He could see a middle-aged man sitting in the restaurant. This person wore an expensive robe and gave off a sense of might without being angry. He had many bodyguards behind him, and he coldly looked toward the Su mansion. His gaze fell on Wang Lin, who was standing on the high steps. Looking at Wang Lin, the middle-aged man's eyes became gloomy. Looking at Wang Lin, he felt like he was staring at Su Dao from the past. Beside him sat 2 youths wearing Taoist robes. They had their eyes closed and wore calm expressions. Su Dao died. He will also die. The country of Zhao doesn't need a grand scholar. However, he can die to us mortals. I trouble you 2 immortals to help us. I'll do my best to meet your requirements. One of the young men had an arrogant expression as he slowly said, Mere mortal, you want him die, then he will die. Wang Lin drank a mouthful of wine and revealed an easygoing expression. He looked at the young man who had asked the question. I heard something in my dream. I will gift it to you. The rain is born in the sky and dies on the earth. The process in the middle is life. After he spoke, the uproar became shocking. As it spread, even the people outside heard it. Most of the old men in the carriages outside were moved. A few silently got up and clasped their hands at Wang Lin before summoning their servants to leave. Just this sentence alone let them know that the title of Grand Scholar was not false. I heard Sir followed Su Dao for more than 10 years and is very knowledgeable. I ask, why are there immortals in this world, and why are we mortals but ants to them? An old voice came from the courtyard. The surrounding people moved aside as an old man slowly walked forward. This old man obviously had a high reputation. Wang Lin didn't know him, but many people here did. They all respectfully bowed at him. Immortals have power, and the power fuses with their hearts, making their hearts increase infinitely so they can see mortals as ants. However, if you have an ideal and expand that ideal to comprehend the world and understand the truth, you can see immortals as immortals without the awe. So what if you look at immortals as if they are ants? Wang Lin drank a mouthful of wine and began to laugh. The old man's body trembled. After murmuring for a moment, he bowed at Wang Lin. He then left with the support of his servant. As the scholars asked questions, Wang Lin continued to drink osmanthus wine and laugh as he answered. More and more scholars clasped their hands at him and left. Some looked back at Wang Lin with respect that had never appeared before. However, although a lot of people were leaving, even more people were coming in. Sir, about the old saying the ancient words have clouds. Our general had heard it at the start of a song before the scholar could finish. Wang Lin interrupted him. I have forgotten the old texts and have comprehend the truth of the world so I can have my own thoughts. I have forgotten such things. Dan Ti asked again. Sir, Scholar Su had been seeking the meaning of karma his whole life, and it is something scholars have searched for thousands of years, but no one knows. I ask if Sir understands it, and if Sir can explain it so I can understand as well. Karma is karma. There is no need to comprehend it, it can only be experienced. There is nothing to explain. If you understand it, then you understand it. If you don't understand it, you don't understand it. I could stand here explaining it for 10 years and you still would not understand. Wang Lin looked up when he finished drinking his wine and threw the jug to the side. Big Fortune, bring more wine. Instead of heartache, Big Fortune felt proud. He quickly took out a jug and handed it to Wang Lin. I want to ask Scholar Wang this. Before you said that if you expand your thoughts infinitely to include the world itself, there is no need to fear immortals and you can view immortals as ants. Then can you do it? The speaker was a gloomy old man. He stared at Wang Lin from within the crowd as his hoarse voice echoed. Wang Lin knew this person. He was the Su Dao's first student, Su Yi, who was already famous in the imperial court. Why can't I? Wang Lin drank and laughed. As soon as he said this, one of the two youths sitting next to the middle-aged man in the restaurant, the one that spoke earlier, opened his eyes. His body flickered and he turned into a ray of light and charged toward Wang Lin. Ignorant ant, disrespecting immortals means death, a gloomy voice filled with majesty echoed. The expressions of all the scholars below changed, and they all kneeled in terror. Immortal. It is actually an immortal. Wang Lin disrespected immortals, and now an immortal came here to punish him. He deserves it. The ray of light closed in and the cold sword light was chilling. The young man in the robe held a sword with contempt and disdain in his eyes. He looked around and then instantly closed in on Wang Lin. The moment the young man in the Taoist robe closed in, Wang Lin let out a roar without any sense of fear. You dare? After he spoke, a powerful aura erupted from his body and an invisible pressure covered the world. The heavens rumbled and countless bolts of thunder and lightning appeared. Before, the world was calm, but now it suddenly changed. This sudden change caused the expressions of all the kneeling scholars to change. This also caused the expression of the middle-aged man in the restaurant far away to instantly turn pale. Impossible! The other young man in the Taoist robe suddenly opened his eyes. There was disbelief and terror in his eyes. The end of the month, wishing for the like button for the VIDEO, Don T hold back, it's expiring. Although Wang Lin's words weren't loud, they were heaven-shaking. The expression of the young man holding the flying sword changed greatly. He was only an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator. When he looked at Wang Lin seemed very large. That roar had also caused the sky to change colors. That mighty aura formed an invisible barrier that caused the young man's face to turn pale. He actually coughed out blood, and his sword light dimmed. He didn't dare to move forward, and the flying sword in his hand fell to the ground. Then he quickly retreated. Impossible! Impossible! You are just a mortal, you read just an ant. You can make me afraid. The young man trembled like crazy and his mind rumbled. His voice became twisted as he retreated, causing the people kneeling to be filled with disbelief. Throughout the ages, such a thing had never been seen before. A mortal had just dared to scold an immortal cultivator. That thunderous roar seemed to linger forever in one's ears. As the young man retreated, the other young man stepped out. His cultivation level was far above the other's side. He was at the mid-stage of foundation establishment. He stepped forward, and his hands pressed against his fellow sect member's back. He looked at Wang Lin and Big Fortune, who were the only people standing. With this glance, he faintly saw an aura above Wang Lin that made him tremble. This aura was strong, and with just a glance, his mind was filled with countless complicated thoughts. It seemed like it was going to break his mind and force him to cough out a mouthful of blood. I have comprehended the world, so what if I see immortals as ants? Forget the two of you, even if all the immortals on planet Suzaku came, so what? Wang Lin looked up, and thunder seemed to be flashing his eyes. His long hair fluttered, and he drank a mouthful of wine. Terrified, the young man felt his scalp go numb. This kind of thing was beyond his imagination. Although Wang Lin looked fragile, he could sense a powerful, upright aura that didn't fear the heavens or earth. It was comparable to a spell that could hurt them, and it made him feel a sense of respect. How can this be? He is just a mortal. Just a mortal! How could he give off such an aura, this person? Can't he be offended? He didn't dare to leave like this, but he remained in the air with a respectful expression. He clasped his hands at Wang Lin as if he was greeting an elder. It was our fault. I hope Grand Scholar Wang take offense. We will leave now and never enter the city of Su again. With that, the young man quickly left while supporting the other young man. The surroundings suddenly became silent. Wang Lin stood there and drank a mouthful of wine. A gust of wind blew by, causing his clothes to flutter before everyone. What's impossible about it? Wang Lin put down the jug of wine and his gaze fell into the crowd. He saw the pale-faced Su Yi that had asked the question. Su Yi lowered his head and his body started to tremble. It took a long time for him to struggle to get up and bow to Wang Lin. Su Yi greets Zhao's Grand Scholar. Reveal character. We greet Zhao us Grand Scholar. All the scholars clasped their hands. Their trembling eyes revealed indescribable reverence. What happened today was something they would never forget. The many old men in the carriages outside lowered their heads. They were content with their loss. They could have never imagined in their lives that a mortal could frighten an immortal, but now they had witnessed it. A complicated sense of pride appeared in their hearts. If your thoughts are infinitely large, if you understand the truth of the world, then you can even look at immortals as ants. This line spread across the country of Zhao from today onward. I am tired. Wang Lin took the wine jug and looked at the restaurant. The middle-aged man in the restaurant was drenched in sweat and in a daze. He didn't dare to look at Wang Lin but lowered his head and bowed. Wang Lin and Big Fortune turned and went back into the mansion. The countless scholars bowed for a long time before they leaving one by one. Finally, everyone who came for their own reasons slowly left, and the city of Su gradually became quiet. No one dared to say a word of doubt anymore. The storm from before disappeared without a trace. Due to this matter, Wang Lin's reputation surged in Zhao and he completely replaced his teacher, Su Dao, as Zhao's Grand Scholar. A Grand Scholar that could frighten immortals. Time passed. Wang Lin's 10-year lecture was still ongoing, but no one was qualified to question him. If anyone came, they were like students who respectfully listened to his teachings. In the blink of an eye, 8 years passed. In 8 years of time, Wang Lin had gone from his early 42nds to someone who was almost half a century old. His hair had started to turn white. During these 8 years, Wang Lin would spend a few days out of every month sitting on the boat with Big Fortune while drinking osmanthus wine. He was always waiting for that person that hadn't come according to the agreement. Not just these 8 years, but he did the same thing in the 20 years before that. A total of 28 years, 28 changes between the spring and autumn. However, in the end, as the boat passed under the bridge, that person still didn't arrive. Master, what are you waiting for? Big Fortune was still healthy, but he had become even more stingy. He often looked at his right wrist in a daze, trying to recall something, but he still couldn't remember. Wang Lin's face was a bit old, and he looked up at the sky. He slowly spoke with a hoarse voice. I am waiting for myself, waiting for a meeting with myself. There was still a white bird swirling in the air. It had accompanied Wang Lin for 28 years without any change. Make yours. As Wang Lin looked, he became a bit tired and leaned against the boat. He fell asleep as the zither music echoed in his ears. The music seemed to fuse with his dream. There seemed to be zither music in that dream too. Big Fortune let out a sigh, and he looked at his right wrist in a daze. The sunlight at noon was very soft and warm when it landed on Wang Lin's body, so Wang Lin slept very well. However, during this season, there were some willow leaves floating through the air. One flew softly across Wang Lin's face, causing him to open his eyes. The boat was still moving. Looking at the willow leaf floating before him, Wang Lin suddenly smiled. Big Fortune, do you still remember when we just arrived at the city of Su more than 20 years ago? Back then, there was also this many willow leaves, and we were also on a boat. As he laughed, a boat passed by. Just as the boat passed by, 2 soft and alluring voices came from the boat. Senior sister, these willow leaves are very annoying. They are very uncomfortable when they land on your body. If you don't think about them, then you won't think they exist. Junior sister, your heart is not calm. After he heard these voices, he was startled. He felt like they were faintly familiar, as if he had heard them before. He stood up and looked over. He saw the figures of two women above the boat. These two women were very young and very beautiful. They stood among the endless willow leaves like two celestials. The wind caused their clothes to flutter, making them even more beautiful. It's them. Wang Lin stared at the boat as it disappeared. In his mind, that boat from that rainy night from more than 20 years ago appeared. As he looked, he revealed a gentle smile. He could not forget how he looked at the ink-like dark clouds in the rain. How he looked at the mighty world and recited a poem. He still remembered how happy he was. The reprimand from the girl named Shu Fei still lingered in his ears. His own blush and heartbeat inside that boat, along with the beauty of those two girls, were still in his memory. They hadn't faded. That thick coat was placed in the bamboo backpack from back then by Wang Lin. He still kept it there, and had never taken it out. Wang Lin let out a sigh. He touched his white hair but didn't call out to them. He sat there and drank his wine. In his life, he had never met a woman that made his heart move. Aside from big fortune and wine, the only other thing that accompanied him was the white bird in the sky. He didn't have a wife. He seemed to have walked through 28 years of his life in this loneliness. If there was a woman that made his heart move, it would have to be when he first met her. The girl named Zhou Rui, who had gifted him the coat. Leaning against the bow and drinking wine, Wang Lin looked down at the water and saw his own old face in the reflection. He had a lot more white hair now. The boat the two women were in gradually closed in until they passed by a Wang Lin's boat. It was like two different trajectories in life, and they continued on their different paths. Hey, Senior Sizer, I think that old man was looking at us. Shu Fei looked at Wang Lin's back. The boat floated under a stone bridge. Zhou Rui turned around, and her sharp eyes swept by. However, from her position with the stone bridge blocking the way, she couldn't see anything. She was also not someone who would check with her divine sense just because someone had looked at her. The two boats floated further and further away from each other. Wang Lin sat on the boat and softly spoke to Big Fortune. Big Fortune, let us leave the city of Su. I have waited here for 28 years. We aren't waiting anymore. Let us go home. Home? Where is home? Big Fortune was startled. Under the Hangyu Mountain. The boat docked on the shore and Wang Lin and Big Fortune got off. He looked back at the river and at the city of Su, where they had lived for 28 years. When they arrived, it was when the willow leaves had just begun to fall. There were a few jugs of wine, a carriage, and the two of them. When they left, it was the same. A grand chapter. Not caring to read 4,500 words, can bear to split it into 2 chapters. As the donkey dies a martyr, tears flow, wishing for the like button for the video. You are listening to a completely free audiobook on the Leo Audio YouTube channel. If you enjoy the story, please like the video to motivate the channel. Support Leo with a cup of coffee through the description link or on the screen. If you want to hear any other stories, just comment and let Leo know. Thank you very much for watching the video. The carriage brought the two of them along with a few jug of wines out of the city of Su without anyone noticing. They slowly headed toward the direction of Wang Lin's home. It wasn't until dusk that the two women from the boat got off and walked down the streets of Su. Their appearances gradually changed and became very ordinary. Senior sister, you grew up here. Aside from the boat, is there any other fun place to go? We have been in closed-door cultivation for so long and finally got to come out. We have to have some fun. I am going home to visit my parents, and you have to follow me. There is no fun place in the city of Su. Tomorrow, I am going to visit the Grand Scholar Su Dao. He was a family friend in his earlier years. Once you go there, you must not be disrespectful. Although he is immortal, even teacher is very polite to him. As the two spoke, a scholar walking by heard this and smiled. He saw that the two women were very ordinary, but he still stopped and explained. You two ladies must have been away from Zhao for a long time. Su Dao died more than 10 years ago. The great scholar of Zhao now is named Wang Lin. He is Su Dao's student. The two women were startled. The scholar shook his head and left with a smile. Wang Lin, senior sister, I remember. The old man that looked at you on the boat, although he is old, he was that little scholar, Wang Lin. Zhou Rui stopped in her tracks and he looked back at the twilight. Before her, the image of the young man blushing appeared. Senior sister, what's wrong? Xu Fei looked at Zhou Rui as if she had understood something. Zhou Rui silently pondered for a moment before gently shaking her head. She walked forward with Xu Fei, but she only walked 10 steps before she clenched her teeth as if she had made a decision. "Wait for me." After speaking one line, Zhou Rui's body flickered, and she charged off into the distance. Her sudden action caused an uproar in the surroundings. The people nearby were in awe and disbelief. They were in a daze for a long time before they reacted. Immortal! That was an immortal! Xu Fei looked at Zhou Rui's figure, and her eyebrows slightly wrinkled. She let out a gentle sigh. Zhou Rui's divine sense spread across the river while flying above the city of Su. However, in the end, she couldn't find that figure. Even after she searched the entire city of Su, it was still the same. Did he leave? Zhou Rui didn't know what was wrong with her. She wanted to see Wang Lin, but fate had made a fool out of her. Once two lives crossed paths, they crossed paths again for a short period of time. Dozens of kilometers outside the city of Su, the carriage squeaked as it moved along the road. Wang Lin was sitting in the carriage, allowing the wind to blow past him. He drank wine as he looked outside the curtain at the dim sky, thinking about something. Although he wasn't old, he no longer looked young. As he continued to drink wine, a few more strands of white hair appeared. He again saw the white bird circling in the sky and flying toward his home with him. Now that he was older, his body was not as good as when he was young. After being on the bumpy carriage for a long time, he felt like his bones were going to scatter. He was extremely tired. Just like this, they traveled and rested throughout the summer. After 4 months passed, Wang Lin and Big Fortune entered the area under the Hangyu Mountain in autumn. When he had left, the side of the road was covered in red and green flowers. When he returned, most of the flowers had withered and the leaves had turned yellow. Although they hadn't all fallen off, that time wasn't far. 28 years Wang Lin looked at the grass and trees around him and his vision turned blurry. He remembered that when he left, he was only a young man, but now that he had returned, he was almost half a century old. The carriage slowly followed the official road into a quiet and hidden village in the mountains. Wang Lin was very familiar with everything here. He grew up here. He didn't catch the attention of too many neighbors as he brought Big Fortune to the home he had left all those years ago. His parents were still there, but his once tough father was now supporting himself with a stick. He stood there with the help of Wang Lin's white-haired mother. They looked toward the road, at their child coming home. Even though this child had become the grand scholar of Zhao and the pride of the Wang family, to them, Wang Lin was the same as he was 28 years ago. He was still their child. It was the same now, and when they were taken to the city of Su, it was also the same. The carriage stopped outside the courtyard. Wang Lin walked down from the carriage and immediately saw his parents. He revealed a soft smile. Wang Lin stepped forward and knelt down. "Father, Mother, Taizhu has returned." Big Fortune blinked. After he got off the carriage, he also knelt down and loudly said, "Father, Mother, Big Fortune has returned." Wang Lin's father laughed. He ignored Wang Lin and quickly helped Big Fortune up. He shook his head and laughed. "You, still the same as back then. You have taken care of Lin for all these years. I can thank you enough, but don't copy him." Wang Lin stood up and looked at his parents' happy smiles. An unspeakable sense of warmth appeared in his heart. He held his mother's arm, supported his father, and led Big Fortune into the courtyard. "Taizhu, when will you leave this time?" Wang Lin's mother looked kindly at her son. Wang Lin was her pride. Still calling him Taizhu? Wang Lin is now the grand scholar of Zhao. Do you know what a grand scholar is? Even the emperor has to respectful. Do you not see how the country lord always come over every year? Wang Lin's father stared at his wife. "I'm not leaving this time. Taizhu will stay to take care of both of you." Wang Lin looked at his mother. He saw her head of white hair and the wrinkles on her face. Wang Lin's return caused an uproar in the entire village for a few days. The neighbors all rushed over. They wanted to see the grand scholar of Zhao that made them all feel pride in their hearts. Even the scholars and officials from the nearby city rushed over once they learned of this. Along with them were relatives from the Wang family. In these few days, Wang Lin's father was radiant and stood straight. What he was most proud of in his life was his son, the grand scholar of Zhao. When he saw so many people coming, Wang Lin's father became even more proud. He took out silver to prepare a banquet in the village. The banquet in the village was originally very simple, but due to the push of many people, it became extremely luxurious. A chef was brought from the city along with materials and personally cooked it all. Wang Lin saw that his father was happy, so he didn't say anything. Given Wang Lin's personality, he normally wouldn't want a banquet and would prefer it to be quiet. However, since his parents were happy, he just let them be. The Wang family all came to visit Wang Lin. They were all respectful toward Wang Lin, and just one nod from him shocked them. Among these relatives, there were older uncles, heads of families, and people in the same generation as him. As Wang Lin looked at this, he felt like he had encountered this before in his dream, only there were great differences from his dream. During dusk, Wang Lin's parents seemed tired, so he left with them. The banquet gradually ended as everyone dispersed in the next few days. The mountain village became peaceful once more. Taiju, you re not young anymore. Why haven't you gotten married? Ah. Wang Lin's father was a bit drunk and muttered a few words. Then he let out a sigh and didn't speak about it anymore. Just like this, Wang Lin slowly watched the sun rise and set in the hometown he grew up in. He watched the years pass. It was 5 years later, in the autumn of the 33rd year since Wang Lin originally left his hometown. The autumn leaves were being swept by the wind and rustling on the ground looking for their roots. Wang Lin's father laid in bed, holding Wang Lin's hands. There was reluctance in his eyes, but what was even more noticeable was relief and pride. Taiju, your father's life will be unforgettable because of you. You father can read, but I found people to gather your books and read them all to me. You once said that the reincarnation cycle is like the 4 seasons. Father remembers Wang Lin's father's smile, but under that smile, under that pride and relief, Wang Lin could still sense a strong sense of fear. He was afraid of death, he was afraid of not being able to see his loved ones, and he was afraid of the loneliness and the unknown that came with death. He clung to Wang Lin's hand as if it was his life, his last root, the last person he could rely on. The light in his eyes dimmed. They were filled with helplessness. Dad, don't be afraid. I am by your side. More than half of Wang Lin's hair was white, and he looked at his father with sadness in his eyes. He held his father's hand and leaned forward. Wang Lin held his father's thin body in his arms, just gently hugging him. Dad, you have me. Don't be afraid, you have me. Dad, do you still remember the birthday present you gave me? That little wooden colt I found it the other day. Dad. In the yard outside, the large tree that seemed to have existed in the village for more than 100 years gave off a sense of age. Most of its leaves had been taken away by the wind, with only one leaf still hanging on. The wind rocked the leaf, and the leaf was running out of strength. In the end, the leaf fell off and landed in the room of the Wang family. Wang Lin's father was no longer afraid. He slowly closed his eyes. He lost his breath and died in his son's arms. The leaf from the tree seemed to have gained a soul and flew off into the distance. Big brothers and little sisters, do you still have likes for the video? Wishing for the like button for the video to help. Chapter 160, Cultivating the Core. The doubt in his heart became even stronger. He pondered for a bit before disappearing and crossing Hofen at a frightening pace. He went into one of its bordering nations, Tianmao. His goal was the Heaven-S Tower at the center of Tianmao. The person inside it was a messenger from an upper cultivation country. Not all rank 3 cultivation countries have a Heaven-S Tower. Hofen and Xuanwu don't have one. This is also why Hofen decided to invade Xuanwu rather than Tianmao. Time slowly passed as Wang Lin cultivated inside the heaven-defying bead. Soon, 100 days had passed. On this day, Wang Lin suddenly opened his eyes. The punish above his head became less and less red, until it went from blood red to gray. An invisible wave appeared, and began to slowly push outwards. The heaven-defying bead originally released gentle light, but at this moment it began to shine brightly. As the wave spread out, more and more of the lights began to shine brightly. Eventually, every light in the area was shining brightly. Wang Lin stared at the scene before him. He was shocked. Shortly after the punish above his head shrank, Wang Lin could sense powerful spiritual energy fluctuations. The fluctuations grew more intense until a gray spherical pill appeared in the air. A bit of flame floated above the pill. Wang Lin reached out toward it, and it descended toward Wang Lin's hand until it was 1 inch from his palm. He scanned it with his divine sense. and found that the spiritual energy contained in this pill matched exactly the full cultivation of someone at the mid-stage of core formation. Wang Lin recalled the information that Li Muan had given him about the kill order. After pondering for a bit, he put it away instead of using it immediately. Wang Lin decided to save this pill for when he attempts to form his nascent soul. It should make the success rate will be higher. The chances of forming a nascent soul were much lower than forming his golden core. The main reason he was able to form his core was due to the underworld ascension cultivation method and Li Muan's pill. If either of these were missing, he might not have been able to succeed in forming his core, and might have been forever stuck at the foundation establishment stage. There was an even harder hurdle in the future though, the nascent soul stage. Forming a nascent soul was simply too hard. Wang Lin believed that even with Ma Liang's body as talent, there was almost no hope unless he could find those legendary pills that could increase the chance of forming a nascent soul that Li Muan talked about. However, almost all of those pills were in rank or higher cultivation countries, and they rarely ever leaked out. Wang Lin muttered to himself, nascent soul, even with the heaven-defying bead. I'm afraid I will need hundreds of years to succeed. What's most important now is to find a new cultivation method. The underworld ascension cultivation method has reached its peak and Situ Nan is still asleep, so I have to rely on myself. The first thing he needed to find was a cultivation method for the core formation stage. But the choosing this cultivation method was very difficult. Right now, all of the cultivation methods he had were from people he had killed. Although there were some that were fitting for a core formation cultivator to use, they were all too different, making it hard to choose one. These were not the key points though. The key point was he wanted to pick a cultivation method that would increase his chance of forming his nascent soul. Thinking about this, his eyes lit up. From Ma Liang's memories, the war god Shrine's divine path seemed to have this effect. However, what confused Wang Lin was that if the war god shrine really had a cultivation method like this, on top of people within their own country being greedy, even rank 4 or rank 5 cultivation countries wouldn't just leave it be. However, according to Ma Liang's memories, the war god Shrine's divine path never piqued the interest of the higher-ranked cultivation countries. This confused Wang Lin. However, the only clue he had was this divine path. Wang Lin decided that he had to get his hands on the divine path no matter what. The divine path that Ma Liang knew about was something derived from a senior who had gained insight to the original divine path, so it was actually a fake. What Wang Lin wanted was the original divine path. Everything Wang Lin had done was to ensure that he would successfully form his nascent soul in the future. Only by preparing now could he increase the success rate as much as possible. But a mere cultivation method wasn't enough to make Wang Lin confident. Forming a nascent soul was very difficult. It has to be said that the qualification for a rank 2 cultivation country to reach rank 3 is someone reaching the nascent soul stage. This alone showed how difficult it was. Wang Lin secretly sighed and went back to cultivating. After staying inside the heaven-defying bead for a few more days, he prepared to leave. Before he left, he went to visit Situ Nan and his parents' souls. After silently standing there for a bit, he left the heaven-defying bead. At some location underground, there was a flash of rainbow-colored light as Wang Lin appeared. Right after he appeared, he quickly dashed off into the distance. At the same time, he spread out his divine sense and carefully observed the outside. It was the dead of night and everything was quiet. Wang Lin pondered for a bit before quickly moving toward the Hofan Union. But before he moved much, he suddenly felt a sense of danger coming from his divine sense. He used his earth escape technique to its limit to quickly go further underground. From 300 feet to 1,000 feet, he continued to go down and his speed only increased. An old voice echoed throughout Wang Lin's divine sense. "This old man has waited 97 days for you, little guy." Wang Lin's skull tingled. His hair stood up and his face was gloomy. Without a word, he continued to descend. 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet, 3,000 feet, 4,000 feet, 10,000 feet. Wang Lin descended straight down, and as he got deeper, he felt a force resisting him, causing him to immediately change directions into a diagonal descent. "Hey, good thing I borrowed this earth boat from someone. It would be really hard to catch you when you escape past the Earth's crust thanks to the force there." The voice continued to echo in Wang Lin's divine sense. Wang Lin remained silent as he suddenly changed directions and started heading up. From 1,000 feet underground to 100 feet, and he charged out to the surface with the Hofen Union mountain range right before him. The moment he appeared, he charged toward the mountain. A screen of light appeared around the mountain. The moment he touched the light, he took out the identification jade he was given. He effortlessly passed through the light and then looked back. At this moment, a large black wooden boat came up from the ground. The old man stood on top of the boat and looked at Wang Lin on the other side of the light screen. He nodded and said, "Not bad. Your divine sense is very strange. Although you have adjusted it to your body, it is still a bit off. It seems you've stolen that body. Little guy, come with me. This place can protect you." Wang Lin's face was gloomy as he silently sneered. The old man's lips moved, revealing a strange smile. His right hand gently pressed against the light screen, making a few cracks appear before the entire light screen completely shattered. The entire mountain shook, kicking up a lot of dirt and dust. The Hofen Union's nascent soul cultivators flew out one by one, terrified. One.